everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com. Shop there today and make yourself look good. Welcome, everybody, to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show, just like it says right there with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. Tonight is going to be a fantastic show. We're going to be talking whistleblowers, UFOs, current state of ufology with none other than our guy, Josh Rutledge, stepping in the building for hours 1 and 2. Awesome conversation. I can see it coming. Also, we got Drew Banky with the After Hours wrap up and Steve Stockton, Tales Untold, Missing Person Mysteries, UFO and Weird News of the Week. It's going to be an awesome show. I can guarantee you that you're not going to want to miss it. Don't go anywhere. And let me go ahead and see who's come on in first, courtesy of Race Fan. Race Fan with the gold. Race Fan back to full form, loving it. Also, we got David Norenberg with the silver here tonight. Awesome, Dave. Thanks for coming in. And Road Flare coming on in with that bronze. Guys, it's going to be a fantastic show. Let me go ahead and see who else has come on in. Appreciate all the early guys coming in. And let's see if we can run down this list and get as many people mentioned here tonight. We do have Magneticus Attractus in the building. Kitty Catty Wag, appreciate showing on up. Let's see. Deb from Sacramento. I see you out there. Also, Roger Murray, June 4th, 1951, Coast to Coast AM, George Norrie, 74th birthday. Happy birthday, George Norrie, Coast to Coast AM. Shout out from Spaced Out Radio. Going to be an awesome show here. Who else do we have? We have Linda in the building, and I'm not going to get to everybody, but I will get to Mel WD40 because he's getting us lubed up and ready for this show. As always, appreciate you coming on in, Mel WD40. I promise I'll get to everybody here by the time we get to our next break here. But we're going to have a great conversation. Frankie B, thanks for coming in. Thanks for showing on up. Awesome stuff. Let's see. Who else do we have? Chris Dean. Thanks for coming on in. Thanks for showing up here tonight. Lisa Piper, new name. Appreciate you showing on up. If you are new, we do welcome you and hope to see you back here. Thanks for coming on in and chiming in the chat. Tom Mothman as well. Now I got to start the podcast side of this as we get this show ready to go. Welcome, everybody, to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. We're going to have a fantastic show tonight. We're going to talk whistleblowers, UFOs, current state of ufology with the guy Josh Rutledge for hours 1 and 2. We got Drew Banky with the After Hours wrap-up, Steve Stockton Tells Untold Missing Person Mysteries, and UFO and Weird News. Guys, let's go. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. And as always, we'll be diving into topics here tonight, courtesy of the guy right here, Ron Bumblefoot. Remember, you can access the archives for absolutely free. YouTube.com/Spaced Out Radio. While you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us. You can follow us on X and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is still and always spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the SR Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, you can rock out the Ron Bumblefoot, the man with the plan, as always, and oh so much more. We're going to have a fantastic show. We have Josh Rutledge stepping in the building talking UFOs, whistleblowers, current state of ufology, just having a general UFO conversation tonight. And it's always great to do that. It doesn't always have to be this big production, this big, long, drawn-out thing. Sometimes you can just sit back and talk UFOs. That's what we're going to do tonight. And we're going to go ahead and waste no time at all and bring right on in our guy for hours 1 and 2. I think you know him. I think you've seen him before. I think you may have even subscribed to his YouTube channel, which is over at Transcendence, the Mystic Journeys as well. Come on, let's talk about Josh Rutledge. Hi, Josh. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Rob. I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for the invite. There's definitely been a lot of new stuff in UFOs. I'm happy to get into the conversation.
That's what I'm talking about, man. So much. Well, let me say it like this. I said this on my other show. As far as the big bomb drops that everybody is expecting, okay, not so much. I don't think, but a lot of little nuggets that if you really look into them and read into them, I'm seeing some good stuff. And as you said, Silver Lining says that we're actually having a great year so far in ufology. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump on into talking about it. So let me ask you, so far, we haven't talked since the beginning of the year, haven't had you on. We talked then about 2024. We wrapped it up. What did we think? How 6 months in, well, almost 6 months in, how do you feel about what is going on so far? Like, what are some things you would point out as wins for ufology?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, if anything can be said about the topic, it's that it's being kept in the media, right? There seems to be, we may go a month or 6 weeks, but then some new information will come out and it kind of re-ups, the focus or the attention of the media. So I think, with the intention of, hopefully the intention of getting more and more people, not just those that have been in the UFO community for a long time, but more and more people acclimated to the ideas and concepts of ufology. From that alone, just keeping it in the mind side, if you will, and in the front page on, the front burner, whatever, analogy you want to use is important. So that alone, I think, is a huge thing for the last 6 months. For me, the big news item though was probably the Immaculate Conception or not Conception, Immaculate Constellation document, that was teased last year. But then the supposed author of that document coming forward with, the 3-part interview with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. There's a lot of, tidbits of information in that. I've got mixed feelings, honestly, about that interview and that document in and of itself. But, I'm sure we'll tease into that a little bit later. Generally just a lot of, also the ongoing coverage by Russ Coulthart of the general topic, finding every opportunity to talk to new people. And again, just continue to keep the conversation going as it relates. Like you said, no big bombshell information has dropped in the last 6 months, but just a continued conversation of what's out there, continuing to kind of push the envelope just a little bit each and every time. Hopefully it'll open eventually.
Yeah, and you couldn't have said it any better. And you pointed to some key things there, with like the Immaculate Conception Constellation. Why I keep saying
I know.
doing the same thing. Okay,
Yeah, I was never Catholic, but for some reason that's what pops into my head every single time.
man. Okay, forgive me. Okay, so yeah, Immaculate Constellation, which makes sense because we're talking about UFOs. So, like, what stood out to you just as far as that went? Yeah, okay, we had the memo come out, then we have the guy come out behind the memo, and as you said, you had some mixed feelings about that because some people, from what I'm gathering, and I'm not fully versed on everything that was said, I got to watch most of it, but it feels to me like the Wilson Davis document, and then it being something that is rumored to have been written or authored, and then now I guess someone stepping out and claiming it. What the comparisons to those, and how did you walk away from that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the big issue that I have with the Immaculate Constellation document and the supposed author, which I always mess up his name. It's like Matthew Bell, I think is his name, but I always want to say William for some reason. But um, when the document was released, and you can go to congress.gov and you can find the document and you can download it for yourself. It's readily available. There's a couple of things that jump out at me. Number one, it's not like any other government document in that it doesn't have a cover page. There's no cover page that says, who it was written by, who it's written to, who's the intended audience to read it. There's no synopsis, all that kind of stuff, which almost every other government document has a cover page. So because of that, for me, I draw a little bit of concern that the person who came forward to claim the document may not actually be the person who wrote the document. It's kind of like in the 90s when crop circles were popping up all over England, and the guys came forward and said, yeah, we create those with boards and rope. Well, the only person that can discredit their account would be if aliens came down and said, nope, actually we did it, which obviously that's not going to happen. So the whole notion that this particular person wrote this document when there's really no signature, there's no cover page on the document that helps us know that, yes, he's the one who wrote it. And so therefore, we can give credibility where potentially it's due. The other piece that really jumps out at me is that just like every other whistleblower, with the exception of potentially, Jake Barber and that group, he has tertiary knowledge of a program. He, to his own admission, he stumbled across documentation, and that led him to investigate that documentation, but he has no direct knowledge of any of the stuff that was in that documentation. So unfortunately, from a whistleblower aspect, he's a lot like Grush in that sense, in that he has tertiary information about supposed projects, but no direct knowledge.
What do you see as the benefit for someone to step forward on the national stage like that and try to take the claim for it? Like, what do you see any benefit for an individual wanting to step out and do that and put their name and face on the line?
I mean, there's the UAP topic is especially over the last couple of 4 or 5 years become a pretty hot topic in beyond just the UFO community. So I think the thing that always come back to, and this seems to be kind of the litmus check that everybody else applies to, is this person trying to make money off of coming forward? And if they are, somehow that discredits them. But if they're not, then it's okay. And so, to me, I don't think so far the person who's come forward and claimed it has tried to make any money from doing so. And maybe in that regard, they're being truthful in making the claim. But it's also very possible that they are simply a scapegoat. They're a seemingly random, normal guy, who worked for the government in a situation where he had access to some documentation. It seems to be that this documentation, though, was actually misfiled. And so as a part of his process, his role of identifying documents that were misfiled, he stumbled across it. And, he felt like after teasing it out that it was something worth bringing to other people's attention. And when they didn't respect his attempts at the normal, let's say, chain of command, that's when he felt like, it was being ignored or hidden or swept under the rug. So when I watched his interview, his body language, doesn't indicate to me that he's lying or being, untruthful in any way. But like I said, because there's no signature or anything on the document itself, it's, you really have to just take his word for it. If somebody else in the community that's already come out, if Grush or Fravor or any of those guys were to come out and say, yep, I know this guy, and the story that he's telling about how he come across this document, it checks out with our experience with, how these documents are sometimes misfiled, I think that would add credibility to his story. But as of right now, all we have is, again, his statement that he went and talked to Grush, and Grush sent him to Jeremy Corbell. So it's a lot of, I don't know, hearsay or kind of anecdotal testimony that really is only supported by his own continued testimony.
So let me ask you this, Josh, because obviously as we sit here and get the name wrong constantly all night, there are people out there like Immaculate Constellation. What in the world is that? What are they even talking about? Can you give a brief synopsis of why this document would be important if it is authentic?
Yeah. So the gist of it is that this person was working at the DoD. They, in an unrelated to their normal job activities, they volunteered to help identify documents that were on a shared network drive that may have been misclassified or, missaved underneath the wrong folder. So as a part of doing that, they come across a PowerPoint presentation that lays out this program called Immaculate Constellation. That is supposedly an ongoing program at the time that would have followed or come after ATIP and OSAP. That was had a page or a screen in the presentation that had Lou Elizondo's image and Lou Elizondo's name, and it just talked about these cases and things that were in this presentation that was the government's ongoing investigation into UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call them. And so, like I said, he saw this presentation. He tried to follow his kind of internal process for bringing this potentially misfiled presentation to his superiors. They dismissed it. They told him, we never had this conversation, kind of very, almost Men in Black type scenario. He felt like, though, that it was important that people knew about this program that was going on, especially Congress. And so he felt it necessary to create the Immaculate Constellation document, which is basically it contains all the information that he obtained through investigating, the jumping off point being that PowerPoint presentation that he stumbled across when he was doing that kind of file sorting activity. And so the reason it came into the know is that during the last congressional hearing, it was a topic of discussion. Several senators, when they would ask their questions, they would say, we've been told not to talk about the Immaculate Constellation document, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. They've been cautioned against talking. So there seemed to be a lot of, at least implied secrecy to not having this, Immaculate Constellation program being known about, this document being known about, etc. So there is an air of importance, if you will, to this Immaculate Constellation program, of which this document that this person supposedly wrote, it talks about in great detail.
And so here's what I'm looking at. This is the part that bothered. Well, there was question, right? Lou Elizondo's image was in the PowerPoint presentation, right? Supposedly.
Yep.
You would think about when we're talking about the UFO subject and how we know they're trying to keep this as secret as possible. And likely you would think, especially with 80 years, with the ability to go into these files, I feel like these files would be on their own server, separate, and not on some open server in this way. How do you think that happened? Like, if you were to look at that, both on looking from both sides, conspiracy hat, non-conspiracy hat, how could that happen?
So, this person talks about where he went and tried to figure out if this was a legitimate document, because one of the early on theories is that it was created as a joke, right? Somebody just grabbed a bunch of stuff, threw it together in this PowerPoint presentation, shared it out on this internal. So the way it's described is, if you have any familiarity with Microsoft Teams, I'm not saying that's what the program is that was being used, but Teams is like, a place where you can chat with team members that, work for the same company, but, are maybe in different departments. And so the way it was kind of described by him is that this document was added to one of these kind of chat rooms, if you will, that existed on their internal, DoD internal servers. And so, the thought was maybe this is a joke, and somebody, and in fact, that was one of the reasons that he was given this, quote unquote whistleblower was given for why he should, just ignore it and move on. But he ultimately found that, in continuing his research, that reasoning or that explanation given didn't hold water, and so that's why he continued his research and investigation. Let's take that aside for a moment, and let's, like you said, tease out the possibility of it maybe being one of two things. Either it's a legitimate document and it was misappropriately stored in the wrong place so that someone would find it. It's like you walk away and you leave your secret notebook at the zoo. Somebody's going to eventually find it, and they're going to open it up and they're going to flip through it and they're going to see what it says, right? It's a purposeful attempt to disclose information without officially disclosing information. So that's avenue one. Avenue two is that it was really meant to be kept secret, and just someone accidentally shared it or filed it in the wrong place. And I mean, I'm sure, even in all of our jobs, and anybody who works in a situation where you have to file documents, there are situations that come up where you could accidentally put something in the wrong folder. Now, granted, most of the stuff we work with is probably not secret, and so it's not a big deal if it ends up in the wrong folder. You just move it and move on. But in this situation, I could totally see just, the human nature of, I clicked the wrong folder, or I clicked into the wrong drive and I saved it. And, oops, it was an accident, honest mistake, but now the cat's out of the bag. And maybe that person who made that honest mistake doesn't want the cat to be out of the bag because, now their job's in jeopardy, or their career, or whatever the case may be.
Man, it just seems so convenient. And I like your first option. I think that's, I'd like to think it's probably something along that line, but it seems too, and then to have Lou Elizondo as picture in there, was that like a dig or something that Lou Elizondo? I don't know, man. I'm just feeling like that was purposely put there, maybe to muddy the waters, or maybe to take validate. Well, I don't know if validation is the right word, but to take the I'll just use, for no other better word, validation away from what we've achieved so far with whistleblowers coming out. The information pertained to be true, and then they slap something like this and put it on a wide open server for anyone to kind of pick up. Now, but then the guy steps out, and then he kind of claims to be the one that wrote the document. But I guess that still doesn't circumvent why, the actual purpose of the slides finding their way to the server to begin with. Yeah, he could write the paper based off the slides, but yeah, what was the purpose of the slide getting there? And I don't know. It just feels like
Yeah.
a lot of government misdirection, maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
It's really interesting too. If you watch the interview, I think it might be the second interview of the 3 that were put out. But he talks about how he started this. He found these files, this slide deck, like 7 years ago. So it's not, although the Immaculate Constellation document that was given to Congress is relatively new, the PowerPoint presentation is older. Let's say 7 to 9, maybe 10 years old. So in that period of time, Lou was really the only whistleblower, right, that had come forward to acknowledge and say,
Okay.
the UAP topic is still being investigated by the government. So at that point in time, as far as credibility is concerned, and the possibility that somebody who would stumble across the file would know the name Lou Elizondo, and even perceive that name in potentially a positive light as a whistleblower, if you're so inclined to, go that direction, or in a negative light as someone who, broke kind of an unwritten rule or whatever, don't talk about Fight Club. That they, having that slide in there, that image of Lou's name, gives, it's like if you write a book, and a person who is like, let's say, Rob, you write a book about abductions and you get a quote from Whitley Strieber. And so therefore you can put Whitley Strieber's name on your book. It gives the credit. The book now gains credibility because Whitley Strieber is associated to the book, right? So it's kind of the same way. I think, if you look at the timeline of the, when this PowerPoint presentation was supposedly created and found, by having Lou's name on it, even if Lou wasn't involved in it, by having his name on it, it gives some sort of it's an attention grabber, right? Pay attention to this because Lou's name and photo is associated to the presentation.
So what do you feel like the next the thing to bring this all the way around and validate this entire situation? Is it going to be potentially someone who can validate that PowerPoint presentation was indeed shown in some sort of meeting, or do you think it was likely something that was shown in the skiff, so there wouldn't ever be the possibility for someone to come out and validate it?
So I think if I were thinking about this, what would give this story more credibility? I think first and foremost, we need people to support the author, the supposed author of the report that's was written based on the PowerPoint. So as of right now, we have his word that he's the author, but no other information has been provided yet to support his claim. So that's number one. Number two is, you're right. I doubt we would ever get anybody that would say, yeah, here's the 47-page PowerPoint slide that this report was written about. Because you're right.
Hold right there, Josh. We'll continue this thought right after the break. We're running right into the first break, guys. Right here, Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with Josh Rutledge talking UFOs, whistleblowers in the current state of ufology. I see your questions out there. I tagged them. We'll get to them later in the show. We'll be back right here on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. See you back here in a minute. All right, we are clear. And yeah, Josh, if you can remember right where you were at that thought process, because I want to ask you just some separate stuff. What's going on with Transcendence, man? Is everything good over there? What's been going on with you lately?
Yeah, I'm kind of taking a break from Transcendence. I was doing it with Debs, and her life got really crazy and hectic, and so she had to take a step back. And I haven't quite figured out, how or if I'm going to keep it going. I'm still gotten my YouTube channel, and I put out shorts and things here or there. And then my friend Stefan and I, we started my foray into podcasting 5 years ago. and we're actually getting ready to launch a new show called The Shadow Signal. That is a kind of UFO paranormal type show once a month, not live. It'll be out on YouTube, on Another Realm Media, and all the places you go to get podcasts. So yeah, that'll be the first episode. Will be out June 20th, and then it'll be the third Friday of every month. Will be a new episode of The Shadow Signal. So.
Man, that is awesome. That is awesome. I reach out to you. I like speaking to you. I feel like we are like-minded in a lot of ways. And there's other people as well, Drew Banky being one, who's in the back chilling like a villain. And Brian Bowden, Sir Brian Bowden. I would love, and maybe we can do this soon, to set up a panel with all of us together on some sort of either this show or maybe we do something separate. But I think that right there would be pretty epic to have all minds in one conversation. So how do you feel? You want to do something like that?
Oh yeah, would certainly be down. I've done a couple panels for you guys and Dave before, and it's always a great good time, and yeah, I'd love to do it.
Yeah, I think that'd be epic, and we'll have to set up. I know Drew Banky is down, you're down, so I just got to get Brian Bowden to confirm, and we'll get that done. And yeah. So, and then we're on break here. So thanks for getting the troll up out of here. And if the troll is watching, you must be new. And I would like to say this, come in and be respectful, as our chat is always respectful to each other. This is a place where we come to gain knowledge and kind of move the needle forward as far as this phenomenon conversation goes. So come on in and play a part. Do that. Don't come in and cause any sort of riffraff or bring in any race up into the conversation, politics, religion, none of that. And just come on in, man, and just have a great time. It's obvious that you are, want answers as well, or else you wouldn't shown up here. You were a new name, and I hadn't seen you in here before, so I just want to say that, kind of extend the olive branch for you to maybe come back and have a great time with a great chat and help get us to where we need to go. If you're still out there listening, if not, oh well, we'll kind of move on. And let me actually say hello to a few people that I did not get to say hello to, which was Broken Shadow Feather. Thanks for coming on in. Fast Hemi also as well. Let's see. Channel Warhorse. Thanks for coming on in. Blue Cruise in early. I like that, Blue Cruise. Thanks for coming on in. Thanks for showing up here tonight. Who else do we have? Bob Berkins in the building. Paramarv, your name that I gave you, Paramarvelous, is in the building. I don't know if I said hi earlier, but I just wanted to say Paramarvelous. So that's what I did. And who else? Yeah, Woo Riders DG saying Sir Brian Bowden recently had a glued off with the Bigfoot. True story. Hey, whatever floats his boat, man. It's all good with me. Thanks for coming on in. Let's see. Lyle Campbell, the Real Messengers, Chris Bledsoe, second. This cover up goes back to 1945. Our military and area space companies working with ETs. Okay, appreciate your comment, Lyle Campbell, a new name as well. Appreciate you coming on in. And we used to do this thing, and I'm going to attempt to do it now, where we welcome all our new viewers. If you are new, you are here at the After Hours Radio Show, which we run this show Saturdays and Sundays, 8 p.m. Pacific till 11 p.m. Pacific. Every single weekend. We have Wednesdays now with Grantavius Max with UFO Max. So I'm not sure when he is. I think it's 8 p.m. Pacific. Also, we have Element 115 Fridays at 8 p.m. Pacific. We have Dave Scott running the Woo Train as well, Monday through Friday. So the point is, 7 days a week, we got something going on right here, Space Out Radio. So we love to see you back. We love to see you hit the subscribe button, tap that notification bell so you know when we're live, and come here to get your day. And bring a friend. It's always a good thing to do. Outside of that, we got about 15 seconds before we come back in. We'll jump right back into where you left off, Josh, and 10 seconds And we are coming back here, guys. Let's get ready. All right, everyone. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. Jumping back into the conversation with Josh Rutledge, podcast host, UFO experiencer, everything, all under the books. We're talking about UFOs, whistleblowers, current state of ufology. We'll be doing that for hours 1 and 2. If you missed any of the conversation, jump in our archives. Absolutely free, totally free. FREE. YouTube.com/Spaced Out Radio, where we have a bunch of stuff here, and definitely. So jumping back in, you were mid-sentence, Josh, and I hate to have to cut you off, but if you would mind jumping right back into what you were saying there.
Yeah, Rob, I totally lost the train of thought. We were talking about the Immaculate Constellation document. I think we were talking about maybe credibility and how we can get credibility for the document. So like I think I was saying that I doubt we're ever going to get the PowerPoint. But if we just got somebody that came forward that said they knew of the PowerPoint, or they created it, or, yeah, it's legitimate, or like I said, I think there are two credibility fronts to this. There's the PowerPoint, which the report is based off of, adding credibility there, and then credibility for the person who supposedly wrote the report and then was interviewed by Corbell and George Knapp.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the dilemma. And so answer me this, because I didn't understand why, and maybe you don't either, maybe you have an answer for this, but okay, so if we have this PowerPoint presentation, maybe it's real, maybe it isn't, then we have the gentleman who discovers it and then writes this document, Immaculate Constellation. When he's interviewed, Ross Coulthart interviews him, he seems to be afraid. He seems to be fearful for his involvement in this. Do you think that maybe he is able to validate that, like him himself behind the scenes has been able to validate the PowerPoint presentation in a way that would have him react that way to the backlash of writing this document?
Yeah, so like I said, I think his body language definitely conveys that of someone who is fearful or cautious, very cautious in how they say the things that, almost even in the, the interviews that were conducted by Corbell and Knapp, he's very reserved in how he, sits and how he positions himself. I think mindful several times, saying that he wouldn't be willing to go into further detail on certain things or whatever. So, yeah, I think you're right in that he does express, or at least demonstrate, a fear of some sort, whether that be, a career retaliation or, threats to life or whatever the case may be. As far as the content being the reason for that, I think that, I don't know. I'm of two minds on this topic. One, we've heard from other, I don't know. I hate to keep using the term whistleblower because I do feel like, they've all of their messages were approved by the federal government to be said. So, are they really whistleblowers? But we'll say UAP contacts. We'll put that. So. Or task force contacts. Well, but if he came forward, all of them that have come forward and said anything have talked about the supposed threats to their lives, to their family, to their livelihood, to their careers, so on and so forth. I would give an experiencer the benefit of the doubt, and so I feel like I have to give them the benefit of the doubt on, if those things are happening. So the fact that we have from other, people who have come forward that this has happened, I have to assume that it either has or will have happened to this new person who's come forward. So I think it's a legitimate concern. But the other side of my mind is, if you really want to give a lot of attention and perceived credibility to information being conveyed, being fearful of one's life about that information adds that air of credibility when really no credibility, or at least no deliberate credibility, has been established, right? If Rob, if you come to me and say, I've got somebody emailed me and I've got these coordinates for this crashed craft, and you're like, and I walked outside to get my mail, and there was a car that I've never seen before parked on the curb, and I don't know what's going on. Like, that to me then conveys that the email that you got, it gives it some importance, when in all actuality, we don't know if, what you're experiencing has anything to do with the email you receive, right? So, what is it? The causation does not equal correlation. So the fact that he is fearful of his life, and that others that have come forward have been, have communicated they've received, threats or whatever, doesn't necessarily solidify then the importance or the validity of the information being provided.
So, yeah, I see. I like the way you position that, because it could be the 42 fake. So he knows he has to put on this display of emotion in order to bring validation or credibility to what it is that had been presented, because it would only be that, or he has to know, or has had to see something that lets him know behind the scenes that the PowerPoint is for sure authentic. There's no doubt about it, which would then trigger what he has done. But if it's a play, then it, exactly as you just described, it would make total sense. So is this one of those, let's just put it on the board, sit back and see what happens? Or do you think we're at a point where we can make some sort of, or come to some sort of 90%, 80% conclusion on, if there's validity here or not?
I've said ever since 2017, my kind of recurring message to anybody who asks is that there is a massive chess game that's being played between those who want to keep this a secret and those who don't. And I think in some cases you have to sacrifice a piece to put your position in a better position to win the game. And so I think, and maybe in this case for Immaculate Constellation, this is a matter of putting information out there to see how it shakes the tree and see what falls out. It's not so much about the report. It's about who responds to the report and how do they respond to the report.
Now, we say who and how, targeting the public or targeting the government?
In this game of chess that's being played, the public is a piece on the board. So it is, none of this is for our benefit. It is to so that we will react and further the conversation. You think about it. Who is really keeping the conversation going? Yes, Congress is having meetings and they're having hearings and things, but they're doing so because they want to have oversight of these special access programs. If somebody comes along and grants them oversight, do you think they're going to continue the conversations? No, because they've achieved what they're out to get, right? Oversight. So it's us, the community. We're the ones that are keeping the conversations going. We're the ones that are letting our Congress people know that we're still interested in this topic. So it's not so much for us, for the benefit of us to further disclosure. It's for the benefit of those higher chess pieces, the bishops, the rooks, the queens, the kings. It's for them to make strategic moves towards their ultimate goal, which is probably a power grab. If you boil it all down, somebody feels like they're out of the loop and they should be in the loop. And so they're going through this whole dog and pony show in hopes that they can get read in to these programs.
Okay. All right. So I'm just to end this part of the conversation here. I just want to ask you this. If you had to choose with Immaculate Constellation as a whole, is it, we got something here, let's wait and see, or let's move on?
I'd probably fall into the let's wait and see camp. There's information in the report that supposedly comes from the presentation that may come of something. It's kind of like the New York Times article in 2017. When it broke, it shook the tree, right? And then in 2018, the Defense Department said, you know what? Yep, these are our videos. They claimed them. And that was a huge move the ball down the field situation. I understand I'm mixing analogies now between football and chess, but there's probably some correlation there. But that was a huge move the ball down the field moment. So I think that this has the potential to lead to more move the ball down the field moments. But in and of itself, I don't think it's that.
All right, and we appreciate football analogies here, man. It's all good. We disapprove of hockey analogies, though. Those are banned from this particular show at After Hours Radio.
What would that analogy be? You move the puck down the ice? Is that inappropriate?
Is that what they use? Is that I have no clue because I don't tune into hockey. It's not even we tune in. Well, I guess we could use puck because I'm an air hockey aficionado. So
there you
go. There we go. So I guess we could use air hockey analogies. Those stand.
Right.
And for any hockey viewers out there, I'm sorry I didn't mean to offend you, but I did kind of Dave Scott if you're watching. But with that being said,
I heard a joke once, real quick about hockey. It said, I went to a boxing match and a hockey game broke out.
Oh, Dave, please, I hope you're listening for this one tonight. That was awesome. I will have to remember that and use that. Now, kind of moving on, there was this, I don't know if you saw this, actually. There was an interview. It was on, and we're not getting political here, but it was Tim Pool's podcast. I don't know. Are you familiar with this podcast?
I'm not familiar with that. No.
Okay. Usually a political sort of podcast, but in this case, he had on Representative Burleson. He had him on. He had him on more than once, 2 times. I watched a couple of episodes. He had Timothy Alberino on one with Burleson, and they were kind of getting really deep into the wooey stuff. And then I watched one where he was there on his own, and they were asking him questions, and I was just shocked to see, because when we see responses or reactions from like Luna or any of these committee members, they respond with congressional speak. They don't really speak from the heart and speak like they would to their friend, right? However, Burleson was on this podcast and he had opened up about an experience that he had. Now, it wasn't UFO related. It wasn't really more paranormal, but they were talking about, maybe as far as the dimension we live in, and maybe we can't see the things impeding into our dimension because they're on a higher dimension level, essentially. So, and he was saying, he gave an analogy of, okay, so say you're looking at Pac-Man on the screen, which is 2D, and you're speaking to Pac-Man because you're in a different dimension or in a third dimension. He's going to feel this voice reverberate through his body and not know what the origin was. And then Burleson chimed in and talked about a time he felt that way. And it ended up coming around to like an experience that he considered being divine. So maybe between God or something like that. But that still, if you want to look at it, could be considered not outside of the normal, and maybe woo, maybe. So It was shocking to kind of see him in that light admit something like that. But he also went a step further during this interview, and he talked about the Tic Tac UFO. Right. This has been more recently one of the more famous UFO sightings, the 2004 Nimitz incursion. Now, he talked about being shown or someone coming to him and saying that was our tech. So I'll start by asking you, do you feel like do you see anything that leads you to believe that the Tic Tac could even be government tech or man-made at all?
I struggled with this question for a lot. You've asked it to me, I think back at the first start of the year. Dave asked it to me before, and my response generally has been, if we have tech like that, we would have deployed it in the war arena, right? we would have used it in some way in the war arena. But recently, I've been thinking about it in the form of the military. The U.S. military is the largest consumer of petroleum in the world, and to use advanced technology in a war arena would potentially be to end a war sooner than with conventional means. If your goal, though, is to keep the economy afloat, the oil economy afloat, then you want to use your oil-based technology as much as possible, right? So it's very possible that the U.S. government, or potentially, contractors, or supposedly there's a shadow government that exists, that we have advanced technology, but to make it known would be the potential end of petroleum-based energy. And with our economy built so heavily around petroleum-based energy, it would be decimation to the world's economy. So from that act, maybe they do just go out and buzz the tower, to use the Top Gun, lingo, but don't actually put it into active operations because of the impact it would have on the world economy. And I'll say one more thing around that. It's also very possible when you talk to people who have contact with UFO craft, with the actual, let's say, nuts and bolts craft, or even orbs. There's always an element of high EMF, right? High EMF radiation, things like that, that tend to affect people and things around them, shut down cars, all that kind of stuff. It's also very possible that our weaponry isn't compatible with, ARVs, because of the technology that is required for an ARV to operate. It would shut down our, weaponry that we would deploy from the craft.
I like that, man. That's great. Awesome, different perspective on it, and I like it. And I'm glad that you said that. And yeah, we definitely have voiced this, talked about this topic here about Tic Tac maybe being government, and walking the middle of the road and always having an open mind is a beautiful place to be, because with new information, new data, you could now have a different perspective on it. And I saved this because I wanted to hear you say that first. But Representative Burleson goes further after talking about the Tic Tac and says that he had someone whisper this in his ear, that it was ours. And then someone provided him imagery of maybe version 1, V1 of the Tic Tac. And he said you could look at it and clearly tell that it was man-made. And then so he went a step further to say that he felt like, or was told, that there had been a V2, and then what they ended up doing is starting to mask the identity of the Tic Tac, and and putting some conventional body around it, so that if you did see it, you would just say it's a military jet, even though with the internals are the Tic Tac. But then I'm like, okay, so that kind of makes me, it just opens up more of a window to say, makes me think twice about, could it be government or not? But there's still a lot that I think that weighs against it. What do you think?
I think it's, well, so number one, I wonder if the person who's whispering in his ear is Stephen Greer, because Stephen Greer is adamant that the gimbal video and the Tic Tac video and the Go Fast, those are all our tech. That's his. That's like a big part of his message, is that all this stuff that if you've got a video of it, it's our tech. That's one thing. So it's very possible that Stephen Greer is the person who's whispering all of this stuff into Burleson's ear. The second piece is that again, the only So to make a claim like this requires there to be the ability for someone to discredit the claim. The only way that can happen is if aliens come and say, nope, you're lying. It's all our stuff, which is probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So we're back to the same situation of the crop circle guys, right? You can make, there's a whole, I can't remember the guy who said it, but all about, ET, not immaculate, sorry. Big claims require big evidence. It's a paraphrase. Well, it works both ways. You can't say it's all our tech and then not provide any evidence that supports your claim.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I think it would be pretty simple to do. Just give us some sort of indication. My whole thing has been that we don't, just as you said earlier, none of this tech has been implemented. It would likely have been used on some level, especially if everybody's working on reverse engineering it. That's why deep in my heart, I don't feel like we've reverse engineered anything, because I figure if we'd been able to do it, then so would China or some other country that has also retrieved this material, because the spy world is so fluid and it would just have we couldn't have it, and they wouldn't be able to have it as well. So yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and the thing that always I think gets me is that the number of people involved in a reverse engineering program would be massive. And I know we have NDAs and all those kind of stuff, but I would expect more deathbed confessionals at this point. Somebody who worked on the Roswell retrieval in 47, they've likely, lived, to the end of their life. I would have expected I got nothing to lose deathbed confession, but we don't get any of that. And so, that's what also kind of makes me go back to, maybe we haven't reverse engineered anything, but maybe we, acquired a craft that we can still buzz around in. I mean, we can fly it. We can't tell you how it works. We can't make our own, but we can buzz around in it.
I agree with you 100% on that. And that was one of the points that I was made months ago. Well, when I spoke to Jim Goodall, literally 6 months ago, because, he often famously talks about Ben Rich, which was his friend, and talks about him saying, we have the tech to take ET back home. And then I positioned it. Maybe you were part of that show, maybe, but I know I told him, I said, let's look at it like this. That statement can be taken multiple ways. Yes, we have the tech because we reverse engineered it, or we simply retrieved a craft and now we're able to man it, which means we technically do have their tech, which would allow us to take ET home. So glad you said that.
Maybe we've just got a red phone, right? Instead of it calling the White House office, it calls ET's office, and they send a transport to pick up ET and take him home.
Okay. I like that one too. So that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad you said that. You're validating some of my thoughts here tonight, Josh, as I knew you would. We're going to go ahead and we got about 15 seconds left. We're going to go ahead and get ready to go into the break here at the top of the hour, guys. It has been an awesome one so far. More great conversation to come, as well as your questions, which I have tagged, and I would love to see more. Let's put them in the chat, put them in all caps, and we'll get those out at the end of the hour as we come right back here on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we are clear. Awesome stuff, Josh. I'll see you in 5 minutes. We're going on.
All right.
Here. All right. All right, all right. If you guys shaking your booties out there, we're coming right back here to the show on the Space Out Radio After Hours Radio Show. Hope you love the break music there. We'll be having new music also coming up soon. We have been having an awesome conversation with Josh Rutledge. We'll be going right here into hour 2. And let's see here. We have about 20 seconds here. I do need to flip this over. All right, your questions coming up this hour. We are coming back from radio. Let me bring Josh back on stage here. Here we go. That's Josh, guys. And 5 seconds. Here we go. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. After hour number 2. We're into the second hour here with Josh Rutledge. We have been having fantastic conversation. UFOs, whistleblowers, current state of ufology, and then your questions at the end of this hour, jam-packed, action-packed second hour. Make sure that you guys don't go anywhere. Stay right here. If you missed any of the conversation, hop in the archives. As I say, every single show, every break, absolutely free, youtube.com/Spaced-Out-Radio. As we get right back into the conversation here, so kind of moving on a little bit here, Josh. You said something that I always say, and I don't want to make it feel like I'm this super huge Ross Coulthart, enthusiast, or here's what I do. When I look at any of these people, and that's why I can look at someone that may be caught in a lie and still give them the benefit of the doubt, or at least take some of the nuggets that they may have dropped and separate the wheat from the chaff, as they say. Looking at Ross Coulthart, and is I always applauded him when he got the job with News Nation and then was able to begin to bring these stories to the national level, the global level. So I've always been appreciative of that. And lately, as you were stating, he's been diving in to kind of other parts of the phenomena. He's been talking to, in some cases, what may be considered experiencers. He's been touching on maybe some of the more woo side of this, separating from the nuts and bolts. I kind of question why that was happening, but I was kind of appreciative as well, because we experiencers don't have any other stage to stand on. So he's at least doing that. Applauded him for that. And he actually ended up getting to one of our close people, this family here to Space Out Radio, and to you as well, Melinda Leslie. Did you end up seeing the interview with Melinda Leslie on News Nation?
I have not seen it yet. It's in my watch list, but I haven't watched it yet.
Okay, I'm just essentially what had happened, and leading up to her actual interview, Ross, and I can't remember who he was talking to. He had, I think, a reality check show where he was bringing up Sedona, just Arizona in general being a hot spot, weird things in the sky. He talked to different people about security guards that pop up around this mesa out there, and they're considering that maybe in the valley, a gulch of this mesa is potentially underground military base. And it's like, okay, before Ross touched that or brought that to the national stage, even in the community, people look around on that topic and maybe chuckle a little bit when they hear that. And I was shocked to see Ross actually take it on as something that he felt important enough to show on the national stage. But then as he was going through this, I was like, there's no way he could cover the subject and not mention Melinda Leslie. And he mentioned her in the episode, and then they followed up with an actual episode based on Melinda Leslie, and she talked about all the same things she talks about here. She does a skywatching tour out in Sedona, Arizona, and they have recorded on numerous occasions lots of military choppers hovering over the mesa, sometimes escorting objects is what she's often said, along with the military presence that some people have run up against. And so she's come to this conclusion that it's likely to have some sort of deep underground military base. First of all, after giving that synopsis, how do you feel about the likelihood of that being the case? And then how do you feel about, do you feel like Ross has likely vetted all of these stories before bringing them to the national spotlight?
So on the topic of DUMBs, because that's what they're typically, deep underground military base. I think we probably have quite a few spread around the country. I mean, everywhere that we have missile silos probably has a deep underground military base. So yeah, I mean, I don't have anything that would discredit a claim for Sedona. So, until I've really been given evidence that supports one way or the other, I can't definitively say. All I'll say is that it's possible. Sedona is a very magical place. There's large quartz deposits. There's the vortexes and all the kind of magical mystical things that happen there. So if I was the government and I wanted to, put a military base in a place where there's a potential for me to tap into, energies of the earth or whatever the case would be, yeah, I think Sedona would be an obvious pick. That being said, I've also been to Sedona a couple times, and one of those times I did a UFO tour, not with Melinda Leslie, but with somebody else. And it was not a good tour. They pointed out a lot of satellites. They pointed out fires on a ridge that kind of across the way where people were camping out and had campfires. And they pointed those out and said they were, alien spacecraft that were powering up. So it was just it was a poor experience. Based on that experience, it's kind of left like a bad taste in my mouth. Is do I want to pay the almost $200 to go out and do one with Melinda Leslie, or is it going to be a similar thing? So it's just part of me wants to see if maybe hers is different, because there are detractors in everything that we do. There are people who are really good and take pride in what they do, and then there are people who are just looking to make a quick buck. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very possible that there could be a deep underground base there. As far as all the activity goes, I've seen some stuff there myself, and I've investigated a few cases from MUFON that were in Sedona that turned out to be unknown. So there is definitely some stuff that happens in the Sedona area. As far as Ross Coulthart vetting the people he has on, I think probably not, because I think that he probably vets a little bit, into their, do they have online profiles to support their claims? Do they, are they credible in the UFO community, things like that? But, is he able to vet their actual claims? I doubt he does any real digging, because I think that the people power that would be required to vet every single claim that someone might have coming on his show is probably greater than the budget that News Nation gives him. At some point in time, at the end of the day, he is also an entertainer, and he has a regular cadence of having shows. And so sometimes that means he has to get guests, I think, that are more fringe than what he would usually have on, because he just needs to fill a time slot.
I understand that all too well. Yes. But I do as much as I can to try to make sure we have conversations that move the needle here, as we're doing tonight. But, Ross totes himself as a journo, right? He's a journo, that's the term. He's won all these awards. Now, I would hope that there's vetting going into, because if and I love Melinda Leslie. I fully am into what she says is real out there, because I've had a lot of people who have been on tours with her who have chimed in, random people in the chat. Yeah, I went with Melinda. I saw these things. Yeah. And then Ross even took the time, which I thought was cool, because it did validate Melinda, and sat down and had a Skywatch. She took him on a Skywatch. Mm-hmm. And Ross admitted that he saw some things power up, some things that didn't make sense at all. So I thought that brought credibility to Melinda, and then the whole DUMS idea, and then also the fact that the whole idea with the DUMS, to go a little further, is that the ETs and ET ships and government craft are being seen in the same vicinity, sometimes escorting one another. So that's the whole thing that was being presented on the national stage. And I thought to be able to add credibility to that was actually pretty cool. you know, it's just it because the thing is if he doesn't vet, then when you go to a Jake Barber or some other person that he
Yeah.
brings forward, then it's like, well, should we be buying into those stories, assuming that Ross has already vetted these people? I'm hoping that he has, you know, because I think it would be his duty, hopefully, to do so.
I think there's a difference between vetting the guest and vetting their claim, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can vet the guest. Does the guest have the bona fides? Do they have, you know, the credentials that they claim to have? Do other people know of the guest? You know, so on and so forth. It's different though to say we've vetted the guest's claims and they are authentic, because especially in a lot of the, you know, government type stuff, it's hard for the, you know, the people that are coming forward and presenting this information. It's hard for them to provide, you know, true evidence that supports their claims, let alone a journalist being able to go and get access to that information. So when I say I don't think he's vetting everyone, I think that he vets the guests. I just don't think he has the ability or the budget to vet their claims.
Okay. Clear. And going a little further, this famous thing that Ross Coulthart has said that now bites him in the butt, and he seems kind of irritated to even talk about or respond to, which I have to say I don't understand why. But he made a statement a year or two ago, that someone advised him of a UFO that was found. It was so big that they had to build a building around it, right? And obviously that's compelling. And shoot, if something is that big, they had to build a building around it, means they can't move it somewhere, obviously. So obviously everybody wants to find out where that is. And, you know, he gets kind of upset and perturbed when people ask him about it, because every interview, that's one of the questions that gets asked. Where is this object? Now, he has said in one of the more later episodes that he just isn't going to give that information up. Like he will not give it up but then I saw Joe Rogan step in on his show, and I saw a clip where Joe Rogan mentions this UFO and says that it could be in Korea. Did you see that? Okay, so like, what do you think about? And I understand, and I've talked to this with Dave about journalistic integrity, and you know, you got to protect your sources, and I'm with that. But when you have a UFO so big that you had to build a building around it, what do you do with that information? If you had a journalistic cap to put on, how do you look at that, and how do you think you would handle that?
You know, I think that it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because in order for you to be a trustworthy individual, that means that you have to keep the confidences that people give you, right? So in order for Ross to be considered a trustworthy person, so that future whistleblowers, maybe we'll actually get to the point where we have true whistleblowers, where they're not, you know, getting their stuff approved by the Department of Defense. In order for those people, though, to come to Russ and trust him with the information, they have to see that he has been trustworthy, that where he has received information in the past, he's held the line. So I think that, you know, in him not willing, if he told somebody, or if someone told him in confidence, I can tell you that this exists and I can tell you where it is, but you can't tell anybody else where it is. Him holding that enables him to then be the person who other people will come to in the future when they are able to share more details about things that are going on. Number one. So that's number one. Number two, I think that there's also, you talk about, you know, he gets perturbed when people bring it up. In the UFO community, we tend to get hyper-focused on specific things that people say or do, and years later we'll bring them up. You ever go home for a family get-together, and you're sitting around telling stories, and somebody brings up the really dumb thing that you did when you were 10, and you get all mad. You're like, when are you going to let that go? It's kind of the same situation, right? We hold on to these things. Like, we'll probably be bugging Lou Elizondo about showing a chandelier UAP 15 years from now, right? Because we hyper focus on the mistakes that people make, or the kind of weird things that they say, and to our detriment. Sometimes it gets in the way of listening to all the beneficial things that people have said along the way.
What I would say is I want the super sleuths out there to, and I'm sure as someone said, they probably are already looking for this thing out there. But this, when we're talking about, especially us that are in this conversation every day, and we're doing these small things that we're doing to try to help us get to the disclosure point, and we have something like this where someone teases knowledge of something that could literally put this thing on his head and really bring in disclosure immediately, then you kind of want that. It's like, it's kind of like if the citizens should be made aware of this, and it's our right to know, then when someone's like Ross says that, it's still a right to know, or as far as the position that experiencers and people in the community and of the world come from, we have the right to know. So they kind of want to imply that onto Ross, and I think he's being frustrated by that. But I think at the end of the day, as I was watching a video where someone talked about that, and they said, well, hey, Ross, you probably shouldn't even brought it up to begin with. If you were going to be locked into protecting sources, then you probably shouldn't have said that, because that's big. That's like not saying someone had a sighting, but you can't tell the information. You said a UFO so big that someone had to build a building around it. What did you expect to come from that is all I'm saying. But with that being said, I know Ross, one of the later things that he did said, as he was explaining that this would be something that he would not ever really divulge, is that he said that the reasons why is that the facility that it's being housed at, or the building, is in a double use where it's being fronted as something else, and that if this were to be known, that it could affect the security of us, our soldiers, potentially just the United States in general. So, okay, I get that. I understand that. But you can't, hint something like that. But I felt like maybe the double use thing and tying it to something that we probably control or protect, I think he may have been dropping breadcrumbs there. I kind of felt that way. I don't know. But I know there's a lot of people out there that are looking for it right now. And hopefully somebody can point to it. And kind of, because I think whoever can do that, and it doesn't have to be Ross, whoever figures that one out breaks open this thing wide open, and I just can't wait for that to happen. I did also want to get into, because I know we have a few minutes left here before we go to our final break, psionics. So Ross Coulthart introduced psionics and more wooey stuff, because just to kind of go back a little, it was nuts and bolts. All reporting on this was nuts and bolts. Then it began about 2 years ago to take this turn or curve into spirituality and maybe the interdimensional. And these are things that people in the government are saying. And then now we get to psionics, which we know as CE5, essentially calling in these craft. Yeah. And there's the group Skywatcher, headed by, Jake Barber, some other individuals. And as we found out within the last month, our guy Science Bob McGuire joined the team, which I think is awesome. He should be coming out to talk about that soon. I can't wait. But what do you think about Skywatcher on the surface?
I mean, on the surface, I think it's a good thing. They're, for number one, they're being transparent. They're putting their stuff on YouTube free. You don't have to have, it's on behind a paywall, which is something that a lot of other, people in the community will oftentimes do, is, they'll tease stuff on for free, but then, to get the good stuff, get the good, the good proof, it's behind a paywall. So I do like that they're putting it out there. They're being transparent. It's the whole notion of psionics, I think, is a means to distance themselves from Stephen Greer. Not calling it a CE5, right? Because even though CE5 existed before Greer, I think a lot of people in the community associate Greer with CE5. And so I think it's a way to, basically introduce a new term that is the same functionality, but distance themselves from Greer. And then the last thing I would say about it is, they're putting out some great content. The UAP dog whistle, the actual mechanical mechanism that they use to attract UAPs, UFOs, that seems to be kind of propagating throughout the community. Different people have tried it. I know several who have tried it and have had good results with doing it. I tried it last night at a friend's house and had some sightings. So there definitely seems to be something to it. So, yeah, I mean, I think if anybody, in the, let's say, non-media realm that is pushing the ball forward lately, it is that Skywatcher group. And then the other thing I was going to say about we were talking about the deep underground military bases is, around that dimensionality piece, it's very possible that all these bases are not necessarily underground, but are in a location just out of phase with this dimension, right? So they could be sitting effectively in plain view, but be out of phase or in a different dimension, a slightly different dimension than our own, so that we don't see them, but yet they can fly in, phase into that other dimension, drop their cargo, fly out, phase back into our dimension, and carry on.
Interesting, very, very interesting. And I've always said and believed that if we were presenting this conversation to, let me step back a little bit. As far as my view of Skywatcher, I agree with you. I think I like the transparency. For some reason, there's this hate out there for Skywatcher, and I think it's a thing within ufology. Anytime there's some group that gets together and does this thing, everyone automatically assumes that they're in it to grift, or they're in it to for monetary reasons. And I don't see it like that. I don't get that feeling when I watched their presentation, and they went through their mindset of not releasing data immediately, and to kind of making sure that it went through these stages and these steps before they even considered it something that should be mentioned or considered anomalous. I said to myself, that's the right step to take. Granted, the government's probably already been doing that, and that's how they have compiled their data. But on our side of the conversation, this is the first time we're getting something like that, where we have a group that potentially is being transparent with us, and then vetting in the same way and using science to try to figure out and categorize these things. And I think their categorizing is a key part of it. As I bring up this slide real quick here, just kind of shows their classes that I think this is brilliant for them to do this. And I think that once you start putting data under these things that has gone through all these steps and paces, that you will have a solid data set that I think people can lean on. One of the things that made me confident about that was one of the shapes here. One of the UFO that I took photos of, 47 objects at once that were in this formation, that I found out people have been seeing everywhere in different parts of the world for a long time, and that Caroline Corey, who I got the pleasure of speaking to, also may have filmed in Terror in the Sky or depicted, as well as the Tic Tac encounter itself being all tied together, and ends up being one of these classes. Brought it home for me that what I thought was actually true, as far as these things being maybe an orb, maybe a sphere, maybe a triangle, maybe a cigar, just these specific things. It'll be cool to know what's seen more than others, what's more common. And, I just have to tip my hat to them going through all the extra paces to make sure that the data that's presented is as vetted as it could be. Right at that point. We got about 20 seconds if you wanted to add anything to that.
I just wanted to add, I do have the UAP dog whistle on my website. If anybody wanted to go and play it, they can go to ourmysticjourneys.com. It's at the top, UAP dog whistle.
Okay, we'll make sure to tag that, because I think that's very important to do as we get ready to go into our final break of the night here with our guest, Josh Rutledge, getting in some real good UFO talk. That's what you got to do. Feels good in your bones, in your soul. UFOs, whistleblowers, current state of ufology with Josh Rutledge. Final half hour. We'll be back right after the break on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. See you back here in a minute. All right, we are clear. We are clear. And last break here, guys. We have questions coming up. Please get those questions ready. Christine feels just like I do. She says, Josh Rutledge is a great guest. I always enjoy when he's on. So do I. Definitely.
Thank you, Christine.
And let's see. Let's see. What else do we have out here? Area 51 sighting. I see you out there. And UAP Truth. Didn't get to say hi to you earlier. Thanks for coming on in. Thanks for participating in the chat too. Just mentioned you seem like a cool dude. So let's keep it moving forward. Hope to see you back. Who else here? Hillbilly Herb or Hillbilly Herb. Either one will do, I'm sure. Thanks for coming on in. Also, Kevin. Is this Kevin Kennedy TMI? Maybe. I don't know. Or it's a new Kevin. It could be a new Kevin. Either way, thanks for coming on in. We appreciate you for showing up here. AJ. Yeah, AJ. Thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing on up. Who else popped in here lately? Caged on the inside wants to know, how do I get that whistle? For you, Josh. How do I get that dog whistle?
So you can Google UAP dog whistle, but I've also got a program on my website, ourmysticjourneys.com, and then there's a thing at the top for UAP dog whistle.
Awesome. And man, we'll talk about that in a minute, but let me see. Andrew Gnomes Trucking, thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing on up tonight. The Watchman, thanks for coming on in. Griff, thanks for coming on in. Thanks for showing up to the show. Who else? Let's keep this thing moving. Let's keep it moving. Yeah, it's always cool to just have just straight UFO convo, man. And Josh is like it's like a guy you go have a beer with, right? And you have this same conversation over a beer with no cameras around, and it's just as passionate and in-depth of a conversation. So awesome stuff. Who else? Yep, looks like we're good. I think I got everybody. I didn't see anyone else. Make sure. Oh, also, hey, let's do this real quick, guys. Let's do an experiment. Call to action, real quick. Everyone here in the chat and even watching, let's take the next 15 seconds. Let's take the next 30 seconds. Give yourself some time. Let's take 30 seconds. Let's go right under the screen. Hit that thumbs up button. And get these likes up over 100 before the end of the show. Let's try to do that. Call to action. Let's stop everything you're doing right now. Let's stop and just go out, hit that thumbs up button, and let's get the likes up over 100 because this is an awesome show. And we want to make sure that it gets out there with the algorithm and other people get to join this conversation as well. We do appreciate you doing that, taking the time to do that. And truthfully, if you don't like it, hit the thumbs down. I'm just saying, just do something. Do one or the other. Hit the thumbs up, thumbs down. Either way, we appreciate you for being here and watching the show. All right. And Christine, I liked it. She said, I liked it. I like that you liked it. Flat 6, I done it. Well, I'm glad you done it. And let's see who else. Let's see. Oh, UAP True 33 on a fantastic start here. We loving you already. I definitely did. And shared the X. I didn't even ask for that. But guys, let's do that too. UAP True 33 has a great idea. Share it to X. Share it to your social media platforms. Appreciate you, UAP Truth. You are on top of it. Loving the start already. It's going to be a great relationship. Yeah, I can see it. Pat Fisher says, thumbs up. Yes, appreciate you. Thumbs up. And I can't see the like, so I don't know where we're at. Actually, I'm just hoping that we can hit 100 at least before the show is over, and make sure everybody knows that you guys thought it was pretty cool. Because we got about 40 seconds left before we come back, and we will jump into questions here. Shaq Valet, I think this was a question, so I'll tag it. It wasn't in caps, so I'm not sure. Make sure, guys, that the questions are all caps, and I will definitely tag them. And make sure you guys go check out Josh over at the Mystic Journeys YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe over there as well. Amanda's Crazy Life, can't forget you. I'm sorry, I almost did. Wow. Amanda's Crazy Life channel, thanks for coming in. 5 seconds left as we get back to the show right about now. Yes, everybody, we're back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show, after hour number 2, back half of the second hour already. Fantastic conversation going on here with Josh Rutledge. He's the guy, he's the man with the plan. I love talking to this gentleman about UFOs and all sorts of things. If you miss anything we talked about so far, hop in the archives, absolutely free, youtube.com/at Spaced Out Radio. Getting back into the conversation here. So yeah, we were just talking before the break about the Skywatcher team, and I was shocked though, Josh. I didn't know that you were going to feel that way, because there's so many people out there that feel like I don't know what they're seeing, but they just are negatively looking at an effort to categorize UAP and UFO craft to build a picture so that we can more clearly process information. You would assume that would be a good idea. Do you see with what some of these people are seeing as negative about this? Do you see anything?
I mean, I don't see anything. I don't see anything negative with what the Skywatcher group is doing. I think that people who see negativity in it are probably those who have their own kind of theories about what the phenomena is. And because the Skywatcher team is finding or producing evidence that is in contrast to, these people's beliefs or, theories, then that is the kind of gut response of, oh, you must not be right because I saw one that looks like an octopus. It's not a jellyfish, it's an octopus, or they're getting bogged down in semantics about what the labels that were given. Well, the one I saw was more like a cigar, not really a Tic Tac. Tic Tacs are small. I saw a cigar. It was bigger than a football field. So where's that on the list? So I think it's, but to your point, and I think this is true. Right now they have Tic Tac on the list, because that's common terminology within the last, 8-9 years. As they continue to do this, they may find that there are subcategories, right? There's Tic Tac version 1 and Tic Tac version 8 and so on and so forth. There's, all these, or the names may change. The bottom line is they're starting somewhere, which is more than I think a lot of the community does. How many of us are armchair quarterbacks, that, pick and choose the things that we're going to support, but don't actually get out in the field and do anything about it.
That is so true to life and true facts right there. And the subcategory piece there, and it just paints the picture that you just imagine a day when this gets fully fleshed and they have enough data in there for you to lean on this to be able to describe or even figure out what part of the world sees what and how often it is. I think just when we're able to have that type of conversation, it's more detailed, it's more informative, and it's more, I think, that one step closer to being able to say we know what's going on, like we know what's going on. instead of just guessing. Will be more on the, we can prove this or we can repeat this. And I think that's going to be a cool thing to see one day. One thing, though, that Barber had brought up that I want to bring up before we start the questions here is that he was saying that he had done a retrieval that was taken to a well-known government private partner. So, and I've said this before, that you know, where I feel like we're right there when we talk about whistleblowers, as far as like what could be bigger than Jake Barber, David Grush, as far as their involvement. And the only step higher would be to be someone in the facility at the contractor that receives the crash retrieval. And that would be the only way you could get higher than Jake Barber and then even the egg UFO crash retrieval. So it's like when we have to start having a conversation about these government private partners, these contractors. Who are they? Who are going to be the ones most likely to be dealing with this? And then start shifting our focus to them, because we know they have the crash craft. And then I don't know if we can get answers from them because they're private. I don't know how that would work out, but at least putting the heat and putting more pressure on contractors to, I don't know, or a whistleblower from within to maybe step out to say something. What do you feel about that? What do you feel about, you know, getting information on the contractors, and being that it seems like that's about where we're at, is just getting someone from within one of these programs to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I mean, you're right. That would be, I think, the missing part of the puzzle is, you know, I would say probably since the, you know, 60s, we've contracted out, you know, anything that we've retrieved, you know, past the 60s, we've probably contracted out, because that's when we started contracting majority of government work, you know, heavily anyway. But I think it's, so two things. One, I think the blowback from a whistleblower from a private corporation that has received, you know, UAP or UFO craft would be much larger than the potential blowback to an individual within the government. And here's my reasoning. These corporations receive millions, if not billions with a B, dollars of money from the US government for these contracts. If they have a member of their staff go to the press and reveal that they've been receiving UAP crash devices for the last, you know, let's say 5 years, let's say they're new on the scene, they've been getting them for 5 years, the amount of risk that goes into then that person receiving protections from that corporation, or, you know, from the blowback from that corporation. I mean, if you put billions of dollars at risk, you know, I don't know what a corporation would do. I don't, you know, this is going to sound very conspiratorial, but I don't put it past them to, you know, to actually carry out a threat. It wouldn't be a veiled threat. It would be an actual threat, and it may be carried out. You know, the people who've come forward in the government, first of all, you know, it's very interesting that all of their statements are vetted and approved by the Department of Defense. So, you know, to go back to earlier, are they really whistleblowers if everything they've said and printed was approved? And then number two, they have protections underneath that, you know, law that was passed a couple of years ago. That law doesn't give them protection, doesn't give an individual in a corporation that is contracted by the government the same protections. So I think that's why we may not hear from, you know, private employees of a contracting company who's receiving this, because the risk to them and their family is too great.
I see that.
And then the other thing I would say is you know, kind of going back to the classification, just real quick, since you've still got the slide up on the screen. The thing I would like to see is us as a community who is investigating the subject to adopt this as a common lexicon. and to add to it if necessary. I work for MUFON as a field investigator. When I classify a case and I choose the option of unknown, I would love it if there was a subclassification for me to choose from one of these 9 things. Let's actually start getting some real data around, from MUFON and Newfork and other places that capture these sighting information and classify these things. Was it an egg? Was it a Tic Tac? Was it a blob? Let's try to get some real data. Because up to this point, I feel like we're just going through the motion of logging cases and logging dispositions, and we're not actually pushing the ball forward. We're not playing the game that we need to play. We're being played instead of the other way around.
Agreed. And I like the idea of adopting this chart here as well. And that's why I had to, when I heard this and when I watched the presentation, I said, this is the right thing to do. And okay, Jake Barber was a quote unquote whistleblower. He didn't have to come back and join a team to now do all this data and kind of, set it up in this sophisticated way. But it's the right thing to do. So I could understand why a person who cares about getting the truth and the answers out there would take these steps to do that. And I totally agree. I would say for sure, let's adopt this as a community or as humanity, because we have to have structure in our approach to getting to the answer. And this literally could be like the backbone to us getting to where we need to go. Will allow us to make that progress. So I'm totally on board with you there, Josh. Love it. Let's go ahead and get some of these questions in. We've got about 12 minutes left here. And let me bring you up here. There's a few questions. Terrence Wills presented this a while back, hour 1. And I think you may have answered this, but just asking, wouldn't an actual whistleblower not go through DOPSR? If they approve what you can say, how is that a whistleblowing? And you kind of said that as well.
Yeah. I think that there is though an element to it where they still took the initiative to get DOPSR approval to come forward. So although it's not, whistleblower per se, they took the initiative to bring what they know forward into the public eye. Even if what they know has been approved by DOPSR, they still took the initiative to do so. They didn't have to, right? So they still let us know that these programs, that these activities were happening, even if their messages are approved. And on the flip side of it, you could say that because their messages are approved, it's almost like soft disclosure.
True fact. Next question was from Paramore, saying, and to piggyback on Terrence Will's question, I hope this was because he has multiple questions. Mm-hmm. Why aren't they telling us, and who is deciding that they don't tell us the truth? What is your opinion?
My opinion is there's nothing to be gained from telling us the truth. Everything that people in power, regardless of where that power lies, people in power do things when it benefits them to do so. Right now, there's nothing to be gained by telling us the truth. To be perfectly honest, I mean, we didn't really touch on it, but the whole thing around Corbell coming out and saying he's seen the document that in 2027 is going to be used to say there's a alien craft that's coming towards Earth, and it's going to be the start of a false flag activity that benefits them, especially in 2027 with the presidential election on the cusp, right? That is a potential power grab. So, always be asking, what is it to gain? What does the people in power gain from telling us the truth? Only when they can gain something from us will we know any more than we actually know.
Good stuff. And I agree as well. Let's see. Moving on, we have Terrence with another question, Terrence Wills. And I'm just going in chronological order, guys, so question for both. What do you make of actual Congress people talking about UFOs and aliens now? And what aren't they telling us? Thank you.
Yeah, you want to go first, Rob?
You know, I would say, what do you make actual comment? And I think I kind of was pointing to this earlier with Burleson. It's cool to see that some of the things that I thought were correct, which was that we would start seeing individuals when you get them individually, people from the government, they're just human beings like you and I, and they will eventually feel comfortable enough individually to come out and talk about experiences that they have had. And we're seeing more and more of that. So I think that is actually cool. When I see them give a press conference about something after a skiff, that's all politics. But when you get them by themselves on a podcast somewhere or on the street corner somewhere, and you ask them and they speak to you from their personal opinion, that's what I like to see. And and we are seeing that what we thought that most people, more than likely, there are a lot more people within the government and Congress that have actually had sightings, and hopefully they'll be comfortable enough to come out and talk about it. And then what are they not? What aren't they telling us? I don't know if I can answer that because I don't know that they know. You know what I mean? So I don't know that Congress is specifically holding anything back from us because I don't know if they even know. I think it seems to be a gap between Congress, what they can find out, and then the people who are actually involved with these programs. There's some gap there, and I don't understand it, but I don't know that they don't know more information that they could tell us.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said, Rob, and then also add in there that I think this is not a new occurrence, right? We've had presidents in the past who, Carter talked about having his experience, his sighting. We've had other politicians in the past who have gone on record to talk about the topic, but it is still, it's less taboo today than it was 10 years ago, but it's still a taboo topic. And because of that, and because of the potential, perception of the people that they're going to be seeking re-election from, I think that's why a lot of Congress people, even though they may have experiences, choose not to share them with everybody else.
Awesome. And I was reading the next question here. It said, let's see. Flat Six was asking, was this last guy approved by Dobster?
Yeah, if you're talking about the Matthew Bell, I think he went through Dobster. He got the same approval to talk about everything that he's talked about in all of his interviews.
Okay, and then let's see. I think we're getting okay. All right. Shaq Valet asked, which one of these shapes represent, and let me bring the shapes back up real quick for the radio audience. We're just looking at the Skywatcher chart that shows the classes. You can look this up online on the Skywatcher website. And Shaq Valet is asking, which one of these shapes represent the metallic spheres, or are the metallic spheres not considered UAP? Great question. And just looking at this, I'm going to go with maybe the egg, because I have to rewatch this to be able to say this for sure, but I know they covered every possible shape that they've come across, and I don't want to speak for them, but I want to say that I think the egg covers that. I'm not for sure. Do you have any information on that?
I don't have any information on it. I would agree that it's probably either the egg or the beam. Because the beam is like it's like it's not transparent. It's like the blob is transparent and you see something inside the blob, but the beam is more, I don't know, not transparent, for lack of a better word. Sorry, it's getting late, I'm getting tired. But so I would say probably, one of those two is probably where it fits. And like the traditional triangle that people report is probably the tetra, so there's things like that where I think you just kind of have to, go with what seems the most logical choice.
Yeah.
And, if we find out that those little metallic spheres are actually some other classification, then I can only hope that Skywatcher would add an additional classification for those.
Yeah. Actually, great information there. And then looking at this, I guess this one for Christine kind of ties into this question here. But she was saying, how about the silver marble ones, looking ones that speed by commercial planes, and those probably are the same ones that the
Same
previous
thing.
question
Yeah.
was.
If not the same thing, similar, let's say, enough to say that they would probably fit into one of those two classifications, although they could be a blob, right? Maybe the thing that you see streaming by is the inner part of the more transparent outer shell of the blob. So it could actually have a larger surface that is just not visible while it's streaking past an airplane.
Yes, yes. And Kaysoon Lee is asking, hey, Rob, why do you think we have gained any progress in disclosure? I think it's basically a lot of what we talked about here is that nuggets continue to come out. We've progressed, and if you look at it, it's almost been 10 years since Lil Elizondo came out, which is crazy. Doesn't even seem like that long ago, but we've come a long way since then. Conversations have come a long way. The conversation is on a national level, is ramped up even in the last couple years, especially with the drone thing happening. And then just the fact that, I would say this too, if you set your expectations too high, you'll often be disappointed with what you come away with because you're over expectating. Whereas if you set them low enough, then you'll be able to see the silver linings, or at least the little nuggets that were dropped within nothing burger, is what a lot of people will say. I always find, even if most people come back and say nothing burger, I always still find why the information that was given was beneficial, and then can kind of point to why that is. So because the fact, as Josh said, we were talking earlier, nothing huge has happened, but we've still been getting consistent information. And as well with Skywatcher, we just got finished talking about, I think everything, all this encapsulates why I feel we've gained progress in disclosure.
And if I could, just kind of go along with that as a little bit too, also to say that, I've posed this question before, but I think for each one of us, disclosure means something different. And so, for you, Kassoon, and for myself and for Rob, maybe disclosure is something completely different. In my opinion, we had disclosure in 2018 when the DoD went on record to say that the Gimbal, Go Fast, and Tic Tac video were legitimate videos. And I honestly think that's the only disclosure we're ever going to get from the U.S. government. But if you're looking for a presidential address where, it's a State of the Union and they say, yep, UFOs are real, and, and they actually, do a walkthrough of all the UFOs in a hangar, I don't know. We may not get there. And so for that, you may not feel like we've made any progress in disclosure. So I think, just take a step back and think about, what does disclosure mean to you? And every person has to answer this, for themselves. And then also think about what is reasonable that you think the government is willing to provide in the form of disclosure.
Great stuff, Josh. And I'll even put this on there, going back to Rhett Burley said, one thing tying into exactly what you just said is they asked him, even though he's, it on the surface, it appears that he's pro UAP, like he's bought into it. And a lot of the conversation that he has kind of says that is true. But they asked him, like, what would you need for 100% proof to say that this is what it is? And he said straight out that he would have to see it. Like, I would have to physically see this right here. And that's fair, and I can't be mad at that, because all that's saying is that I want the data to produce what it is that we're looking at. And I'm fine with that. And I was glad that he said that. But that just kind of adds to maybe, another person's perspective of what they consider disclosure. And we're all fine with whatever we get. But as Josh said, and I think is awesome, we need to make sure we adopt this model. Josh, I appreciate you coming in. Where can everybody find you? Got about 20 seconds.
Yep. My website is ourmysticjourneys.com. From there, you can book a session. I do tarot readings, dowsing rods, all that kind of stuff, channeled messages, or you can go to my YouTube channel, which is at Mystic Journeys 44 on YouTube. And I've got a new podcast coming out later this month with my good friend Stefan called The Shadow Signal. And that'll be on Another Realm Media on YouTube.
Conversations that
All right, Josh. Thanks for coming in. You've been awesome. We'll be talking real
Mr.
soon.
Rob G.
Thank you.
The only
Take care.
place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we are clear. And last question of the night from Kim Jellen. Rob, why are you so awesome? Keep up the great work. Thank you so much, Kim Jellen. I appreciate your appreciation of what we're doing here. And you're awesome, and I want you to know that. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into the last break of the night right here on Spaced Out Radio After Hours Show. See you guys in about 5 minutes. All right, we're coming in hot, back from radio right now. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show, after hour number 3. We want to go ahead and thank our guest tonight, Josh Rutledge, for being awesome like he is. Great conversation on UFOs, whistleblowers, current state of ufology. If you missed any of that, archives are free, so you should be able to go watch that anytime. YouTube.com/The Spaced Out Radio. We'll go ahead and get ready for hour number 3. We're going to jump right on into some Steve Stockton Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries. We love the Steve Stockton's part of the show. Let's go.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries. Number 10, Jeannie Hessel. Jeannie Hessel was a 37-year-old social worker from Arlington, Massachusetts, who had dedicated much of her life to helping others. In July 1995, she and her boyfriend, Mike Monahan, decided to take a well-earned break, which saw them heading to the Yosemite National Park. Unfortunately, this trip would quickly turn into a living nightmare for Mike and Jeannie's family, and while her body was eventually found, we still do not have all the answers in the case. On July 9, 1995, Jeannie and Mike hopped into their car and headed to the Yosemite National Park. Driving down highways and turning through intersections and rugged roads finally led them to Glacier Point, which is close to Summit Meadow. With the sun shining and plenty of nature to explore, Mike and Jeannie went their separate ways, walking off in different directions to take a look at whatever they wanted. This arrangement suited the couple, and they had agreed to meet back at their car once they were finished. The walks were only meant to be short, with Mike picking up his binoculars while Jeannie set off in a separate direction. Around 15 minutes had passed, and Mike decided that it was time to get back into their car to carry on their journey. As he neared the car, he saw that Jeannie wasn't there. He waited at the car, thinking that Jeannie would appear at any moment from her short walk, but as minutes turned into hours, there was no sign of Jeannie, and Mike knew that something was amiss. Panicked, but not yet wanting to alert authorities, Mike searched the area himself, pulling in the help of other hikers and asking those in the area if they had seen his girlfriend. Unfortunately, no one had, and 2 hours later, Mike approached the Yosemite Park Rangers and alerted them of Jeannie's disappearance. This report was taken seriously, and within hours of the report being made, helicopters had descended from the skies and sniffer dogs and their handlers were carefully combing through the park. Mike watched on as search crews and volunteers looked for his girlfriend. By all accounts, the two had shared a happy relationship and had lived in Arlington for several years. Jeannie also had a good relationship with her roommate, Vicky Fortino. Her disappearance came as a massive shock to Mike, and the next clue in Jeannie's case would only further traumatize him. As mentioned, sniffer dogs were brought in to help track Jeannie's scent, and these dogs hit on Jeannie's scent almost immediately and circled back around to the road where her car had been parked. The dog handlers had a bizarre reaction to this discovery. Instead of theorizing that perhaps her scent was not strong enough or that other factors were at play, they jumped straight to the idea of foul play. Moreover, they began to point the finger at Mike in the initial hours of the investigation, even though there was no solid evidence whatsoever to prove or disprove this theory. Why the dog handlers jumped immediately to the conclusion of murder is something that we'll never know, but this idea that Mike or another person possibly was somehow involved in Jeannie's disappearance has persisted to this day, especially social media sites, internet forums, and other places where armchair web sleuths like to congregate. With the idea and instance from some that foul play was involved in Jeannie's disappearance, the park rangers wasted no time in calling the FBI to join the investigation. While park rangers and FBI agents were processing the details, teams on the ground and in the air continued to look for Jeannie, and in fact, this search turned into the largest search in Yosemite's history. Search and rescue teams, tracker dogs, volunteers, park rangers, police, FBI, and even paratroop jumpers were all brought in on the search. And despite hundreds of pairs of eyes surveying the land, no sign of Jeannie was found in the park. Mike was thoroughly interviewed by the FBI, as were Jeannie's known associates and friends. The FBI was quickly able to rule out Mike after he passed a polygraph test. As we know, however, though, polygraph tests are not an exact science nor an accurate measure of someone's guilt, and are not even admissible in some courts across the world for various reasons. So, for 2 weeks, the FBI and other agencies scoured the area in which Jeannie was last seen, and all they found were 2 footprints that were believed to have been made by Jeannie's boots. One footprint was near the car, and the other, interestingly, was on the trail of Bridal Veil to Yosemite Valley, which is a very popular and well-traveled trail. So, if Jeannie had headed down this popular trail, then what happened to her? At the 2-week mark, the search was officially called off as the FBI and other agencies failed to find any other evidence that could lead them in the right direction. Jeannie's friends and family were dismayed when the search was called off, but her roommate, Vicky, was determined to keep the search effort alive for her friend. In a brave move, Vicky started her own unofficial search, calling in the help of her friend, Maureen McConnell, and the two set about searching for resources and centers that could help them. They settled on the tracking school run by Tom Brown Jr., and after conversations over the phone, Tom turned the case over to a student of his in California who agreed to help Vicky and Maureen. Tom returned to the area that had once been abuzz with FBI activity and decided to take a different path. In an article for wildwoodtracking.com, they described the route and methodology that the trackers used to find Jeannie. The article states, the student called a fellow tracker student who lived near to Yosemite. The student checked out the place where the young woman had disappeared. He found no signs of Jeannie, but he did notice that the area consisted of stands of aspen trees. It occurred to him that when the wind blew through the leaves, the resulting noise closely resembled that of a car driving on a paved road. Unfortunately, if one were to search for a road by walking toward the noise, one would be walking away from the true road. The tracker students also studied maps of the area and determined that Jeannie would have likely walked somewhere to the right, as writing hand dominance apparently plays a larger role in our decision-making when walking. Despite detailed graphs, maps, and plans being written up and debated, no sign of Jeannie was found. The tracking school and those associated agreed that Jeannie perhaps went into shock when she noticed she was lost, which would have thrown all rational thoughts out the window. Unofficial searches for Jeannie continued, with Vicky and Maureen ever grateful to the efforts of the tracking school and those involved. Trackers continued to scour through different maps and plans of the area, hoping that something would jump out of the page at them. And something did. Using data and techniques learned at the school, they were able to pinpoint a rough and rugged area in the park and even gave investigators the coordinates. However, investigators were not interested in the least with what these tracking students had to say and quickly dismissed their ideas. Then, on September 3rd, 1995, 2 months after she vanished, Jeannie's remains were found by 2 fishermen in a small body of water. The area in which Jeannie was eventually found is 3/4 of a mile above Bridal Veil Falls and around 3 miles from where Jeannie was last seen. The fisherman who found Jeannie later told investigators the area is accessible to anyone other than rock and mountain climbers. It's really rugged. So, this begs the question, how did Jeannie end up there? And what had happened to her? Due to the advanced level of decomposition, Jeannie was identified via dental records, and unfortunately, the coroner was never able to determine the cause of death, although many believe she may have drowned. It would later transpire that the area the students had pinpointed was indeed the area in which Jeannie was found. But now that she had been found, the discovery of her remains left investigators with even more questions. Investigators don't believe that Jeannie was carried to the area, but they are unable to provide any other theories as to what may have happened to her. Perhaps Jeannie went into shock and tried to cross onto a trail in that rugged area, or did something more sinister happen to her? For almost 27 years now, Jeannie's case has remained unsolved, and it's high time that her friends and family get the answers and justice they deserve. If you have any information about Jeannie or her disappearance, you're asked to contact the FBI's San Francisco field office at 415-553-7400. Number 9, Carol Turner. 32-year-old Carol Turner was a postgraduate student at the University of New Mexico and loved nothing more than exploring the great outdoors. When she wasn't studying hard for her degree, Carol would often wander into national parks and open areas to get a look at the plants and wildlife around her. Unfortunately, the trip she made to the Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument in January of 1971 would be her last. And ever since then, her disappearance has remained a mystery. On January 31st, 1971, Carol drove to the Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument in Arizona. Carol had a keen interest in plants and flowers, and the monument was the perfect place for Carol, as it is home to many species of wild plants and is the only place in the U.S. where the organ pipe cacti grow. As February crept in, Carol was still in the park, and the last confirmed sighting of her came on February 2nd, 1971. Park ranger recalled speaking to Carol as she had asked them for hiking suggestions and also told them that she was staying in the main visitor campground of the park. Sadly, there's very little information available about Carol's disappearance, and all we do know is that sometime on February 1st or 2nd, Carol hiked up to Bull Pasture in the Ajo Mountains, and that she made that trip again on February 3rd. Unfortunately, Carol never returned from what should have been a day hike, and her absence was noticed immediately. Her car was still parked in the Bull Pasture Trailhead parking lot, and the only thing missing were her boots and canteen. Park rangers immediately recognized the car and its owner. After all, she had spoken to them just a day earlier, asking them for hiking recommendations. Tucked neatly under the windshield wiper of the car was a handwritten note from Carol, giving the park rangers very specific instructions. This note, in context with Carol's disappearance, is certainly chilling and makes you wonder whether Carol maybe had a premonition of what was going to happen to her. The note read to the effect, "If my car is still here by February 4th, call park rangers. I'm a solo hiker." With her sudden disappearance and this ominous note, park rangers wasted no time in reporting Carol missing, and soon authorities had descended on the area. A wide-scale search was carried out for Carol, but no sign of her has ever been found. Over 3,600 hours were put into the investigation, but it remained fruitless. Volunteers, search and rescue personnel, sheriffs, investigators, and other experts, totaling 64 people, all joined in the search for Carol, but were unable to locate any clues. Carlton Oglesby, the sheriff's lieutenant at the time, told the Ajo Copper News on February 11, 1971, "Everybody, the monument people, our people, Border Patrol, the Cells Law and Order, has worn themselves out looking for this woman. They're all experienced, and they've gone over the whole place with a fine-tooth comb. None of them see how she could have been missed if she's in there." While Carol has not been found, investigators did discover some baffling entries on the trail registers across the park. At the trail log for Bull Pasture, Carol had cryptically written, "Hi, if you have binocs," meaning binoculars, "look for a white shirt or yellow windbreaker across the way and say hello." The other entry read, "I brought the beer. Where were you?" This now begs the question, who was Carol waiting for? Who had she brought the beers for? And why were they meeting on the Bull Pasture Trail? 2022 marks the 51st anniversary of Carol's disappearance, and we are sadly no closer now than we were in 1971 in solving this mystery. In fact, there's an underwhelming lack of information in Carol's case, and she's not been listed with NamUs or other authorities. Anyone with any information, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, is asked to contact the Organ Pipe Cactus National Park Rangers at 520-387-6849.
All right. Tales Untold, Missing Person Mysteries with Steve Stockton. And Steve, I'm telling you, the guy could read the back of a receipt to you and make it sound compelling. Totally appreciate him being a part of Spaced Out Radio's The After Hours Radio Show. And you know what time it is. We're going to go ahead and jump right on into the After Hours wrap up with none other than Drew Banky.
You're an irredeemable monster!
Come here, I'm gonna eat you! Get in my belly!
Kick him in the north! Kick him in the north! Do it! Do it! Wolfman's gone north!
You're a monster!
Yeah. Drew Banky in the building with the After Hours wrap up. Drew, thanks for joining us. How have you been, sir? Yeah, maybe if we unmute the mic.
I've been busy, man. Just doing some interviews, recording some interviews, doing some live interviews. I was on a broadcast channel Alpha with Augie, So go check that out. That's a recent interview I did. Got some ones I recorded that'll be coming out. And yeah, working on selling the house and helped my goat deliver a baby a few days ago. So about 2 days ago.
What do you call that? The person that helps deliver the baby at home?
I'm a goat midwife.
There you go. Drew Banky, the goat midwife, being another look. How more awesome can the guy get? He's doing awesome stuff already. He on PTSD and bringing all the troops in and doing all the stuff there, and then on top of it all, delivers a baby goat. You're the goat. You're the goat, Drew Banky. You're the goat, man.
Yeah, it's just another name tag, brother. Another name tag that I wear. So
many hats, the man of many hats.
Yeah.
So, we nuts and bolts UFO conversation tonight. Just beer talk, sitting around the bar, having a beer, talking UFOs, and those usually are the best conversations when you have those. No cameras would be around. How did you enjoy the conversation tonight? What did you feel about it? And we're going to talk about some of that stuff.
It was great. I mean, Josh is always a great person to have on. His opinion, I hold a great weight and everything. He's very well thought out in his his takes on things, and him being MUFON former or current MUFON investigator. It holds a lot of weight. He's had a lot of experience. He's seen a lot of cases, and yeah, the conversation. I mean, it went all over the place. Lou's name come up, and he's been in the news a lot lately. But the question is, does one picture take away from, or does one mistake take away from everything else? Unfortunately, in this arena, it does. It does. One mistake and your credibility is gone for and lots of people have a hard time getting that back. So Lou's name's been coming up a lot, but I think he's right. I think just already happened. It just depends on what his breakdown towards the end, talking about it's kind of like, what's your definition of disclosure? It does it take the president coming out on the South Lawn and holding a press conference and laying it all out, or is it common sense of, they've already said it several times, congressional hearings on UFOs, that was unheard of just 10-15 years ago, and now it's it's just every other month we're having one, and just more and more stuff's coming out. So the take on the evidence, I missed a part of the name who had the video, like and you generally said, if there's a video out there that can change the course of this whole thing, like why is it not the public's property? It doesn't make sense that it's not the public's property, for one person to be holding. Basically, it's a key holder, at that point, and it turns into an ego thing. But if you have video out there that's going to change the perception just like that, let's see it.
That's how I'm talking about it. We can start there, because actually it wasn't a video. What it was is, it was Ross Coulthart who had came out and made that statement, that famous statement a couple years ago that haunts him to this day, where he stated he had been told of a craft so big that they had to build a building. And the delivery was so suspenseful, the way he delivered that statement, and it was like, it was made to instill this emotion in the viewer, the person that heard that. So I'm like, okay, so there must be a tail end to this, or there must be a way for us to get to that. And maybe, and here's the thing I didn't think about, is maybe, and hopefully, the information has been given, the location at least has been given to the right people. So maybe he can't tell us, but he did double down, and because people ask him every interview since then, they want to know, where is this UFO that's so big? Because obviously, if it's so big, as I'll talk to Josh about this, if it's so big they had to build a building around it, means they likely can't move it, which is why they had to do that in the first place. So it's there and it's not going anywhere. So how about we just find out more about it? But and maybe you can lean into this because you are a veteran and you have been overseas and you know as far as sensitivity of U.S. assets overseas, because it was presented, and this is what he said. He said he was never going to divulge it because where it's being held protects the if he were to divulge it would potentially endanger the U.S. interest, and that this facility is being used as like a dual facility. So it's being fronted as one thing essentially, but it's actually a building that's enclosing this astronomical craft. So with the sensitivity aspect there, and you have dealing with overseas and protecting U.S. assets, I can understand, right, why he won't divulge the information, and talk more about why that would be a bad thing if he did that.
Well, I mean, from their perspective, it would be a bad thing, from a strategical standpoint, especially, I mean, if it's depending on what the front base or, Federal Reserve or protected land or whatever. I do know that it's a very strong theory that I really align with, that most national parks and protected lands, things like that, they hold secrets. That's why they become national parks and things like that. So most things have a front around them anyway. So it's a good possibility this could be in one of our national parks. This could be in some protected land. Who knows? It may not be even in the United States. It's a good possibility. It might not even be in the United States. But I can almost guarantee it has something to do with some type of protected land somewhere. That's and if you go around these areas like that, like,
let me give you. Hold on, Drew. I want to because I should have given you this. You don't have all the information on this. So, but essentially, you're right. It is outside the United States. Ross did confirm at least that. But Joe Rogan also made a comment on that quote that Ross made and ended up saying that this craft is in Korea. So with that in mind, okay, U.S. maybe assets in maybe South
North
Korea,
or
I would
South.
think. Right. So how would that, with that in mind, go ahead and make your statement, knowing that it is in Korea and potentially
I
military.
mean, then you start getting the conversation of nuclear strategies and things like that. Just recently, just a few hours ago, Ukraine had a massive bombing operation on a Russian airfield, and so they took out 30% of the Russia's bombers. So it gets into nuclear, especially when you're dealing with that, especially, and we don't know if it's North or South Korea where it's at. That would be getting pretty specific, but that could be the reasons for our presence in South Korea. Depending on when this craft was landed, when it crashed, or whatever. This craft that they're talking about that has the building around it, that could be our whole reason for being in South Korea. So the strategic part of it, I mean, there's always a secondary reason, like I was saying, with national parks, things like that, protected lands, there's always something on that. So it could very well be on one of our bases, like in Korea, one of our major bases.
All right, we're going to go ahead and go into our final break of the show right here, Spaced Out Radio After Hours Radio Show with Drew Banky. Doing the After Hours wrap up, we're going to get right back into this conversation when we return, and maybe even talking about some coordinates to said building, as someone may have just slipped us some background information. We'll see when we get back. Spaced Out Radio After Hours Radio Show. Talk to you in 5 minutes. All right, we're clear. And while we're doing that real quick, you had something, right, Drew? You said that we were going to show.
Yeah, you want to see pictures of a new house. You know, I always. Yeah, just
so Drew
always like to share with the fam.
Drew is moving from beautiful land to beautiful land again, right? Just living the dream, Drew Banky out there. And let me see.
Yeah, I think I talked about it last time we were on, that we had looked at a house and we're thinking about buying it and everything, and we put this thing on the market and it didn't even make it to the listing. And we had some friends that come over, a friend of a friend, they come over and we showed it, and they're in the process of buying it right now. So yeah, it's all happening really fast, and that's why I'm just really excited about it, because it's lining up so fast. It's just really clear that's supposed to happen. So
okay, there's a video included in that. Is that also supposed to be there?
I don't know. Was it
walking up to a gate at night?
Oh no, that was from from that night that light appeared in the sky that was all over. People talking about it. So that's part of that's part of the story too, because we went and looked at the house, come back, and I was standing outside and looking, just standing outside looking up at the stars and kind of just praying for a sign if we should buy this house and sell our house and all this stuff. And that big light appeared in the sky. It was that night.
Yeah, see, they're not gonna be able to see that.
Yeah, smaller pictures. But yeah, we're moving back to Crestone, so we've finally found a place that we really like, and it's got so that trees right there you can see. We're on that side, the creek, and then the house, off-grid house, and yeah, it's awesome.
All right, let me try to save that and then open it this other way, because you can at least zoom in on it. And let me see. You said it's God's country.
Goats. 2 days ago we had one of our goats had babies, and we lost one and saved one.
Okay, here we go. All right, let's give this a shot. Let me try to remove this photo.
Woo Riders, it's really far. It's not really far away from the mountain, so it's possible there could be some gold down there, because it is mountain fed, but it is a little ways away from the mountain itself. There it is.
All right, so is this still at elevation, like where you're currently at?
Yeah, so this is all the way. If you look at the top of the picture, that's Mount Blanca, but that's the other side of Mount Blanca. So you always, if you've seen pictures of me from here, right now I'm on the opposite side of that mountain. So that's Mount Blanca. That's
other. Oh, okay.
That's the north side of Mount Blanca, and I'm looking at the south side of Mount Blanca.
Oh, awesome. And I don't know if we're going to be able to. I know Fast Hemi had Flat 6 sent coordinates. I don't even know if I can get them together in time. But let me see. I do see them. Let me see if I can copy the. It won't let us do that. Let me see.
Yeah. Oh, Chris Tyne, I'm in Blanca right now. I'm about to. The Aurora Borealis is supposed to be visible at night after midnight. So right after the show, I'm going to be going outside and filming some of that. So. Yeah, I've lived in this valley for 8 years now. And used to live in Crestone, so we lived in Crestone before we moved here in 2020.
Hopefully. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. We're doing the After Hours wrap-up with Drew Banky right here. We're on the last 20, 30 minutes of the show. We're going fast as we go ahead and get ready to jump back into the conversation. Remember, Josh Rutledge, if you missed any of that conversation from hours 1 and 2, jump in the archive. It's free, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and check out what you missed as we get back into the conversation here. So we were talking Ross Coulthart prior to that, and the UFO so big that they had to build a building around it. And then we were bringing up the fact, where I added the context that Joe Rogan ended up slipping, I guess, if you call it a slip, during the show, stating that this building potentially was in Korea. And so I was asking Drew Banky, who is a United States veteran here, how that, and has been overseas, wanted to know what that could mean. And you were kind of in the middle of explaining that, if you wouldn't mind to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, first thing that comes to mind, especially being in Korea, whether it be in North or South, I mean, it's a nuclear. The strategic nuclear threat behind it is very real right there. So I'm assuming it's in South Korea. So that would be a pretty good assumption. So that kind of narrows it down. And North Korea is tied to Russia, and then you start, whenever you start having that conversation, it's a nuclear conversation. So I think that's probably where they're talking about, and who knows what type of reversed or forward engineering or whatever they have done with this craft. How long has it been there? And I would go as far to say that maybe that's the whole reason we have bases in South Korea. Maybe that's the whole reason we have a presence in South Korea. So the front company that's being talked about, the thing that's up front is probably our bases in Korea. And if you want to narrow it down just by logic, just look at our biggest bases in South Korea.
And I love that input there and that knowledge, and I want to punch this into a coordinate converter. Maybe if it does come up, then I'll show it, or at the very least we'll talk about it on a different location. Okay, this is, where is this at? Is this in Korea? Okay, this did bring something up, and let me see.
Also, Rob, I mean, if you look at the bases in South Korea that hold our nuclear arsenal, that would give the government and the military a reason to have heightened security around that base.
Okay.
That would give them an excuse to have, that would give them an excuse to have really heightened security around the base. Do we have no nuclear warheads in South Korea?
I would think so. With North Korea having nukes, I would think we do as well. I can't confirm. I don't know, but this is South Korea for sure. It's Anyang, and let me bring this up. Actually, you can see it really good, and I'm going to bring this up. So for the radio audience, the coordinates, if you want to go and type these in, let me go ahead and read these out to you. This 37 degrees, 24:15 north, 126 degree, 55:47 east. So write those coordinates down. Go to Google, go to GPS coordinate, type in coordinate tracker, or tool, and you'll find that. Type in those numbers, and you'll see exactly what we're about to talk about here, or at least bring up to show our viewing audience here. And let me go ahead and share this with everyone. All right, make sure that's up there. Okay, that is up. And let me go ahead and bring this up. Let me show how it reflects. Okay, you guys can see that very good. Let me let's do this. Focus on that. And all right, so this is where that coordinate takes us. This is courtesy of one of our viewers out there, Flat Six. Appreciate these coordinates. Not sure where Flat Six got these from, and I must say I can't vet that these are legitimate to the building so big, but it's at least going to be fun to look at or talk about for the moment. So let's take a look here.
I wonder what comes up when you look at that area from like satellite.
Yep, we're about to switch that view right now. That's the suspense, right? So we're jumping right into satellite view, and as it loads, this is what we get. So this is where it takes us, and what I do see is I just see a bunch of trees. I see what looks like. Let me, if I can get closer here. Okay, and this is okay, but it does say in English. Thank you. Stationary store, and I'm just looking. These, truthfully, just looks like some sort of complex or facility. Is the UFO okay? Maybe is the UFO? What do you call that? A cigar shape? Because then maybe yes, this building. Okay. I could see that. A long building.
I seen someone in the chat saying maybe that's like CGI or something, or doctored trees, and maybe because you can almost see like a line if you go over from the marker in those trees. There's like I don't know if it's a trail in the trees, but there's like a straight line. You go over to no, the other way. Go over into the trees more. You see this line right here.
Right.
Yeah, right in there, right there,
here,
right below your
right
cursor.
Right.
Yeah,
here?
there's a line that goes down and it makes a 90-degree turn. Like right there, there's another line that goes across the other way, away from the buildings.
Okay.
Right there.
So maybe the building is mimicking the canopy coverage of trees. Is that what we're saying here, or?
Maybe they got trees on top of the building.
Okay, maybe
they planted foliage on top of the building.
Yeah. Okay.
Who knows, man? But I'd be interested to find out where information come from.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know. We'll have to look further into that to see, and I'll just keep those coordinates and kind of write them down for safekeeping, and we can definitely come back to that. But it would be interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
This might be breaking news right now. Like we might be witnessing history right now on this show.
Well, we could. Tomatman says go north of there. We have someone telling us to look further north of here, which I will. Let me back out a little bit, actually.
But it's Mothman, so.
Okay, it's going out too fast. Okay.
Oh my. Yeah, we're gonna be in North Korea.
Right, it's giving me a little. Look at that. That's crazy. I can't. Okay, let me do this. Jeez Louise. All right, north of there seems to be just a forest of trees, just a lot more trees. What the world is that? Okay, that might be. So the court now, it didn't take us to this, but this could be. Oh my. So what can I mark this? Let me see. How can I get these coordinates here? That is the shape of a UFO. Cool. That is the shape of a saucer, and it happens to say Army facility. Oh my. Okay. So we might I don't know. What do people think about this? So the coordinates that were given. Now let's step back a little bit for those who didn't hear. So Ross Coulthart has been talking for the last couple of years about a building so big that had to be built, or a UFO so big that a building had to be built around it, right? And he's never given up any information on what or why. He can't really say. He did end up saying that it'd be a dual purpose facility. And then he alluded to the fact that if he were to say or give any information about it, that potentially, the security of U.S. interests could be at stake. He would not say where this was located in the world. He did say it was not in the United States. Joe Rogan, I guess, picks this up. I don't know who Joe Rogan has talked to, but Joe Rogan just made a statement like, yeah, and then the UFO that's so big that's out there in Korea, and a lot of people grabbed onto that and said, okay, oh, Korea, we're looking at Korea. Obviously, we're probably not talking about North Korea if we're talking about U.S. interests. So it only leaves South Korea. We ended up coming up on some coordinates from one of our viewers here, and it does kind of lead to a facility that does say Army facility, could be Korean Army facility, but it does have a building, a peculiar building that happens to be the shape of a saucer-shaped UFO, like a perfect circle. Now, what that actually is, if that's been there forever, if there's video of the inside of this out there, that'll probably be the next thing to look at to kind of either check it off the list and say, nope, that's not it, or if there's mystery behind this, we can't, there's no information on what is in this building, then I think that is one to be peculiar or to keep on the list.
Look at
it says we
this
the U.S. in that building. Okay,
look at this road. Look at this road going down, Rob. Look at the end of it where it curves down that building. That's a guard. That's a guard gate.
Where it curves. Okay, yes, it's right there.
That's a guard shack right there. Yeah, you can see
right here.
You can see. Yep. That's a controlled access point. There's only one road in.
And here's my thing, right? When we talk about in design language, like I've been big on that, when we talk about man-made craft versus black projects versus actual UFOs, and the design language is one thing that I kind of picked up on. Now I'm just looking around the area to see if there's anything else that would stand out as very strange as far as shape goes. This is the only thing. And this is very compelling at the very least. I don't. Wow. What do you think about that, Drew? I mean, does it make the hairs on your neck stand up? We were looking for something else, and we saw this strip mall essentially, and was like, nah, it can't be. And then we get directed a little bit north from that coordinate, and then we see something that literally looks like a UFO viewed from the above, landed on the ground. We know it's probably not that. But is this the building that that Ross was talking about?
It very well could be. I mean, look at the position of it in the middle of it's basically in the middle of the woods. It looks like it has one very long road. And when you get close to it, when you zoomed in closer to it, you seen a fence that was going around it. So there's a security fence going around it. There's a guard shack. When you get close to it, I mean, it's military installation in a foreign country, so it's going to have security points, but the shape of it's peculiar. It could be water storage. I seen someone in the chat say something about water storage. Could be water storage. That's a very important thing that's well protected. But it's is it close to a military base? And if it's water storage, it would be closer to a military base. And it's out in the middle. Like they wouldn't have water storage out in the middle of this woods, if that makes sense. It'd be closer. It'd be a lot closer to, some type of infrastructure.
Wow. I mean, I'm just
in
this,
my
it just
opinion.
yes.
And just so you see the fence down right at the bottom, just outside the circle. There's one layer of fencing there. I'm sure there's other layers, but why is it round? Why is it out in the middle of the woods? If it's water, like I said, if it's water storage, it's closer. Are they using it for meditation? Like, is it
Yeah.
a church? Like,
Right. I mean, all those things. I think having these coordinates, I think that's a good jump off point. We see what this weird thing is, and let's dig up more information on it, because I think maybe we might be able to pull something out of this, and hopefully someone else is way further along this. We're just jumping on this right now, but I would think hopefully someone has already done all the vetting and research and looked into this, and either said, hey, this is even more compelling because of X, Y, and Z, or hey, I checked it out. It shows it from ground level. There's really nothing to this. It's just who knows. But because it's round, why? Let's think about why a building would be round in that fashion, that large, which is very, very large. Let's not parse that. It very just strange. I don't even know what to say. It's almost a loss for word
you can
about
see. So in this picture, for those that can see the picture, and if you look it up, this guard shack has a vehicle right beside it. So to give you a comparison of how big this thing is, like, look at that vehicle set beside the guard shack, and then look at the size of this. It's I don't know, probably 40,000 square feet somewhere. I don't know, man. It's a huge building.
It is.
Yeah, but why is it round? Why is it out? Why is it out in the middle of the woods? Why is there one long road that goes? And if you go back, I think maybe that long road goes all the way to that original like strip mall area, which that would make sense if that was the the people that work there, things like that. Because I think I seen on the other side of that strip mall area, I think I seen some like apartment complexes, things like that was in that same area.
All right.
And
Well,
I believe. Go ahead.
I think that's compelling. I think that's just compelling enough. I think what we'll do, we will revisit this. We'll come back and look at it again. So I don't know. You have the coordinates too, Drew, during the week. If you want to do some research and look into this even more, I'm going to do the same. And then we can bring this back up next weekend and look at it again. And what I'll do for now, you can hang out here with me. We're going to jump into a quick news story before we end the shows. We got about 4 minutes here. Try to squeeze it in if we can. With the UFO and weird news of the week. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. But I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, UFO and weird news of the week. We're going to try to get through this story really quickly. Man who recorded the best ever UFO footage answer questions about video being fake. He sure wasn't a scrap of something going by. A man who recorded the best ever UFO footage has explained why he doesn't think what he saw was fake. There are plenty of people who are convinced they've seen a UFO hurtling through the sky, and some even managed to get video evidence of their sightings. Some of the claims people make aren't hard to debunk. Others take a lot of it more explaining. One of the clearest pieces of footage of a sighting was taken by someone who was up in that very sky themselves and became convinced they'd had a close encounter of the third kind. The footage was dubbed one of the greatest UFO video evidences of all time by ufologist Jaime Maussan, who has been caught with fake aliens in the past. However, truth is in the eye of the beholder, so you might as well give it a look and learn why the person who filmed this thinks it's genuine. The video was taken by pilot Jorge A. Ortega, who was flying in the skies above Antigua, Colombia, when he spotted something peculiar moving through the sky. Within just a few seconds, A strange square-like object can be seen flying past Ortega's plane and goes whizzing off in another direction. The bloke claimed that he and his co-pilot had seen the object hovering in the air between the cities of Medellin and Santa Fe before it suddenly gained speed and moved towards them. Ortega claimed that the pair had wanted to keep following the strange sight before it started heading right for them. However, Ortega was able to get some footage on his phone, which he claimed as proof, and that he had bona fide daylight encounter with the UFO. And you can find that footage online. It's Jorge Ortega, Arteaga. Why is Ortega sure it's a UFO? The big question is anyone is going to ask when someone says they've caught a UFO on camera. There are all sorts of objects in the sky, which might just be a balloon, a scrap of something else floating about in the wind. However, the pilot said that since his plane was at 12,500 feet, there's no chance it could have just been a balloon. Ortega claimed it would be too cold and turbulent at that height for something like a balloon to survive in the skies, so he reckons it must have been a UFO. On top of that, the pilot claimed the thing he saw was something totally unknown without means of propulsion, and he thought it moved in an intelligent manner. You may believe what you like, but the man who saw he filmed, he's convinced that he laid eyes on a UFO that day. And doesn't that sound like all of us? That sounds like all of our stories here. And it's always cool when you can point to something that strikes down one of the main skeptic debunks. Is, oh, it's a balloon. Oh, it's a drone. Oh, those are birds. No, definitely birds. So when you have something and you have and that's why data is important, because when you can bring something like this to the table and then you vetted it, you looked through it, you processed the data, you can, and you were there, most importantly, you can tell people why you feel like it wasn't what it was as the actual experiencer of the event. So they get to see it, you get to tell it, and you get to tell why you feel this was an authentic UFO sighting. Everyone should follow those guidelines. Drew Banky, do you want to leave the audience with anyone real quick before we get up out of here?
Now go out and look outside. Aurora Borealis, you can see almost in the whole country right now. So it starts at midnight your time. It doesn't matter what midnight to 3 is the time frame to go outside and look up. It doesn't matter what time zone you're in. Midnight to 3.
Midnight to 3. Awesome. Make sure you guys are out there to do that. We want to thank our guest tonight, Josh Rutledge, coming in, being awesome for hours 1 and 2. We want to thank Drew Banky with the After Hours Wrap Up. We want to thank Steve Stockton Tells Untold Mr. Person Mysteries. We also want to thank the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot. He's the man that rocks us out each and every weekend, each and every show, telling us to never say never again, because yes, the phenomena is real. It is real, which means anything and everything beneath that is possible. If you love the show tonight, like what you heard, go ahead, throw your horns up. Also hit that like button, subscribe. Thanks for tuning your frequency tonight, Spaced Out Radio, where we do what we do best. What's that, Drew Banky? We
own the night.
We own the night. This show's been copyright SOR Media Ventures Limited, Spaced Out Radio. It has been a pleasure once again serving you as your host. I'm Mr. Rob G. That's Drew Banky. This is the After Hours Radio Show. And to all you space travelers out there, this isn't a goodbye nor farewell. However, you can best believe as we go off air for the night, we'll be back doing the exact same thing. Make sure you are here for that. We will see you soon. Much love. Talk soon. Clear, great show, awesome work, Drew. Awesome work, Drew. And awesome work. Once again, we want to thank our guest tonight, Josh Rutledge. Awesome as well. We got to set up a panel, as I was talking earlier, coming up, Drew. So we got to just get us all together. I don't know how we're going to do it, if it'll be on this show, if we'll just do some standalone daytime show where we just all sit on a panel for about an hour and kind of talk about phenomenon UFO. We're going to do something, though, soon. With that being said, let me go ahead and do the day thing and put the name on the show and all that stuff real quick here. If you have anything you want to talk about, Drew, you can talk as I get into this.
Follow me on all the socials, and yeah, just let's support everybody. I want to see everybody succeed. I want to see everybody have #1 podcast. I want to see everyone have best-selling books, and you know, here's a time to share our stories. Like, so if you're listening to this and you haven't shared your story yet with someone, start with just telling a friend, family member, something like that. Start out like that, like, you know, and go from there. But we all need, like I said before, many times, that we all have pieces of this puzzle, and we need to, you know, we all need to share our stories and help put this together, man, because it's about all of us. It's not just about one person having disclosure, and we're not going to wait for the government. I mean, we never have, never will. So,
You damn Skippy. I can cuss now the show.
That being said, I think I think this is the year. You know, I believe a lot what Chris Bledsoe says, and some of the things that he's talking about very publicly. So I'm not giving away any secrets. You know, there's people that are studying this. There's a group of women that are really interested in that are in the government, that are really interested in the consciousness aspect of this. And they already know this is happening. So they're working to get ahead of this ahead of time of this consciousness shift. And I think that's exactly what we're doing. It's been my message since 2019. So I really think this is the time.
And you're right, and and I'm glad you actually brought that up, because there was a thing that I was looking at earlier where I gave part of the quote where Barber was basically saying that a retrieval, this is Jake Barber, by the way, says that a retrieval was taken to a well-known government private partner, and then stated that, which is a contractor, a government contractor, for anybody who doesn't know, where these UFOs might be being held, the crash retrievals. He said that he personally took the crash retrieval to a government private partner. Then the object was transferred to another private partner that deals in consciousness. So where is this thing going? It's taking a hard right and going into consciousness. How this plays out, how they explain why they have taken, we kind of know why, because we've experienced it, right? But for them to explain why they're all of a sudden taking the hard right first into spirituality, now more even harder curve into consciousness, and why they're doing it so quickly instead of letting people get used to the nuts and bolts idea first and then bringing these things in. Like, what's the whole plan? All I know is they're doing it, and we will have to see why. What do you think? Why do you think they're doing it?
Well, you know, I heard recently, and this kind of hearsay, so it's not vetted or anything, but I think it's around 2004, Bush Jr., when Bush Jr. was in office, there was some type of vote of some type of vote with the Pentagon, government, and everything, and they basically weighed out everything. They had a panel of experts from all different types, philosophy, religion, healthcare, everything, and they weighed it all out, and because they were going to disclose it back then, and this is the whole premise behind it, that they had this vote and the cons outweighed the pros, so they didn't disclose it. And I think it's very true. I think it's very true. And because really the implications of full disclosure threatens everything about our society right now. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's the Vatican's involved in this, the Pentagon's involved in this, the government's involved in this, and people think that the president's going to come out and talk about this on the East Lawn or whatever in front of a group of reporters. He's a temp, and I think I heard Rogan say it best the other day. He's like a substitute teacher, he gets just enough to deal with the class throughout the day. He does, the president is a substitute teacher. The real people that are controlling this narrative, we probably will never hear their name, never know their names.
All right. Great place to go ahead and shut this thing down, guys. It has been great. Awesome stuff here. And I want to make sure, God, I was going to say something, but we will revisit that. A lot of the stuff we talked about in hour 3, we're going to revisit in hour 3 next week. Be prepared. We're going to really be doing some good work here, Spaced Out Radio. After Hours Radio Show, man, I feel it, and I know where we're going, and it's going to be really awesome. So once again, Drew Banky, appreciate you stepping in and doing what you do, and we will continue this next weekend. Guys, thanks for coming in tonight. We are getting out of here, and I'm going to drive across town home. So, bon voyage. Bon voyage. Adios. Goodbye.
Hasta luego.
Buenos noches. Hasta luego. Yep. Hasta luego. And all of the above. You guys all take care. See ya a little bit later. All right. Bye.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.